listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is James Payne, and thank you so much for joining us this Monday morning. I've got Chris Perez here as my co-host for this episode, and we are sitting down with Carson Keys. Thank you so much for coming in and spending your afternoon with us.
Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited to talk to you about what your adventures have been this year and kind of your backstory, your history. There's definitely going to be multiple episodes worth of content here. So I don't know about today. We'll see how much time we have, how long I can keep you around.
There you go.
But no, yeah. If you're listening to us from Alaska, hopefully your September has been a super successful one. I've been traveling around the state for my work. Anybody that's listened to the show for some amount of time knows that's kind of what I do. I'm a traveling telecoms technician, so I'm pretty much anywhere Cantwell North is like my zone. That's where I travel, and I can't give away where, but man, I have seen a lot of really nice moose coming out of the woods all over the place. Like big old boys getting shot in this state this year. So congratulations to everyone that I've seen, and anyone that I haven't seen. If you've been successful, congratulations to you as well. It's a great thing to get out there this time of year. I've been on a little bit of a different path in life than filling freezers. Mine's already pretty full this year. So, but how about you, Chris? What have you been up to?
Oh, I've been absent for 3 weeks.
I know you.
3.5 now. Yeah. Been out traveling for work too.
Yeah.
So went out and worked in Teller for 3.5 weeks, and it was a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was a bummer being away from the studio, but it was good.
Yeah, we missed you here.
Good one to throw under the belt.
Yeah, it's all right. Carl kept the laughs going. We had some good times.
Yeah, so. I heard you guys did great.
Yeah. No, it's good to have you back, man. Good to have you back in the studio.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah,
back to be good to be in civilization again. That was
is it though? Is there's a give and take. Yeah. No, yeah, I like coming back to town sometimes. The long trips away can be fun though, especially when you end up just out in those villages where there's not a whole lot of self service and not a whole lot of these distractions that you experience when you live here. It's just that's the one thing with living in town for me is sometimes it gets so just dang distracting. Everything going 100 miles an hour, like.
And our town is, most people listening to this are probably like, what the heck is this guy talking about? My town is 10 times this size.
Hard to understand.
Yeah.
No, Fairbanks is not huge by any stretch of the means, but it's busy. It's growing.
I don't know. I was telling Carson, we were rapping last night, talking on the phone, and I was telling him, I was like, this trip was really good for me and my wife. I think I told you the same thing too. We just talked more, and it just seemed that the time was more valuable that we spent communicating, and so we did pretty good with me being gone for that little bit, and it was almost and things do slow down. You don't have all the distractions and long days out there, and and it makes you reflect on things, and it's nice to be home. And now I'm back out of my routine.
Yeah, right. And I feel that way with my work. I mean, I wasn't gone for 3.5 weeks, but I'm habitually gone for 4 or 5 day trips, at least once a month, and it kind of keeps things, refreshed around the house. By the time my wife starts getting tired of me, I disappear for a couple of days, and then show back up, and she's like, "Oh, you're home." I'm like, yeah. Yep.
Heck yeah.
So, but it's nice. It's what do they say? That distance makes the heart grow fonder. So, but
I've done a lot of out of town work too, and shorter stints. But the location was definitely a plus. It was cool because a lot of the guys, we were working long days and stuff, and I mean it was pretty tiring, and the weather was rough. There was some really nice days in there, but we were working out in some rough weather. And usually when you work somewhere like that, the last thing you want to do is get off the clock and go play in that stuff. And I I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go plan this stuff, and I fished a bunch and like
there you go.
Went and mingled, and a lot of these guys and I got to hand it to them because I was working with a grade A crew, but some of these guys were just like, I'm going to bed when I get off. And I fought the fatigue and went around and met people and just and I'm all into culture and, just the way people do things and made friends because I'm a social butterfly like that. And,
Well, and the cool thing with remote Alaska is like every one of these villages has their own culture, like some similarities, across everywhere, but like each one has like a way they do things.
Their own history.
Yeah, their own history, their own people. And it's like, it's really neat. That's one thing I've loved about my job is, when you try not to be an introvert and you're out there and, we have to get rides from people to and from the airstrips and stuff like that. So you always get that chance to talk to the locals.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one has been just an absolute pleasure to talk to.
I've not had the opportunity to spend much time in the villages around here.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to. That's something, before I go, I want to go experience some of that.
Yeah.
But the crappy thing about, it's a blessing and a curse, but living in Alaska, it's like, man, you can have a list of things that you want to do and all over the state.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a good chance that you will never cross it all off.
True.
There's just so many cool things to do.
Yeah.
So many cool things.
And it almost blows my mind. I remember when I first got here, I got stationed at Wainwright in 2009. And we would be like driving down to Fort Greely, and one of those annoying convoys everybody gets stuck behind. Yeah, that was me at one point. But we would be going down there, and everybody's like, "Oh, I can't stand this drive. I can't stand it. There's nothing here." I'm like, "Bro, are you looking around? Like, there's the river, there's mountains, there's and like the view from Delta is gorgeous. Like."
I have onyx pins all over the place of just like, that looked cool. That looked cool. That looked cool. I want to go here one day, just
right.
like
all those
over.
pins you're never going to revisit.
I know.
I know. I do the same thing, dude.
Dude, I've got to go like clean mine out so bad. Like I zoom out to where you can see the whole state and it is just a cluster.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
I started color coding everything so I know like places I've actually been versus things I have to go check out later.
There you go.
It's like, otherwise it's crazy. Oh, dude, it's so cool. Like once you get into the customization, like I use Onyx for almost everything, and like trails are different colors. You can do solid lines, dotted lines, dashed lines, thicker dashed lines. So like if it's a boat ride, I've got it a different line and a different color. If it's a wheeler ride, if it's a hike in, if it's, like everything's color coded and different.
I've tried that, but then I always forget my color coding scheme.
You got to have a notepad too.
I'll say that's what the Note app is for in your phone.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, no, I've been, my September's been a little bit of a cluster. Moose season didn't catch me by surprise, but everything else in life did. So I was telling you a little bit before the show. I've been real quiet about it up to this point, but my wife and I finally got into our house. We've been working towards getting into home ownership for some time now.
Congratulations, man.
Nice, man.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I've been running from about 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. for the last about 2 weeks. So it's been an adventure. I'll say that. But no, everything's been going good. The move in. We had a little bit of a hiccup. Closing kept getting delayed 1 week at a time, and then another week, and then another week, and we were supposed to be all done moving in and everything like that.
Were you guys just all packed up, living out of like
basically
a suitcase for 3 weeks in your own home?
Yeah. Well, and for anybody that hasn't caught on in other things that I've stated in the show, we lived basically without running water for the last 4 to 5 years of our life. So, because rent in this town is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
We live in one of the most remote places in the country, so everything here is more expensive than a lot of other spots, and rent is among those. You're looking at $1,500 for an in-town 2-bedroom apartment. Pushing $1,800, $2,000 for any kind of a house or like a really nice duplex.
Easy.
It's
easy.
Yeah, that's easy. So, dry cabin living was the cheapest way to be able to save money and kind of push towards our goals and whatnot. And so it's nice to be able to actually have like a real house now.
Awesome. It's a good feeling.
But yeah, so that's been eating up a lot of our time. But I did want to give a quick shout out. I worked with some really awesome people to get into this house, and they deserve some public praise for what they did. I worked with Edward Check with the Hedgecock Realty Group. Absolute rock star as far as realtors go. He's a hunter too, outdoorsman. He's always out doing stuff. I mean, he was calling me. It was awesome. He was caribou hunting and got some cell service and was calling me about the negotiations on the home.
That's awesome.
From his caribou hunt, walking me through. Oh yeah, no, my buddy's on a stalk right now. I'm just watching him. Oh, yep, he's within. Oh, I think he just shot. Hold on, can I call you back? It was awesome. That's pretty and just the dedication. Like I mean, he stuck it out with us. We looked at several different homes, and he dealt with all the negotiations superbly. Always getting back to you, no matter what he was doing. If you need a realtor in town, definitely give him a call. Talk to JT over there for a little bit too. JT is a great guy. He's we talked for quite a while on the phone. I think all of about 20 minutes of it was official business, but great outdoorsman. If you're a hunter and an outdoorsman in Alaska, Fairbanks area, and you're looking for a realtor, definitely hit those guys up. They're great. And I went through First Rate Financial for our all our financing needs. Worked with Barclay. And his team, man, they were rock stars the entire time. They were just. I felt like I was the slow one in the system. It's like every other day they were hitting me up with updates and keeping things moving and flowing, and everything was grooving. And I just wanted to give them a public shout out, man. They did phenomenal. So, yeah, just
that's nice when buying your first house is super intimidating. It's it's like, well, how do you even accomplish this? So to have good people on your side is huge. So I'm glad to hear that.
And I told them every time they'd call, I'm like, yep, I'm just along for the ride. Yeah. Yep. Whatever you guys need from me to get this done. Like,
you tell me what I need to do.
Exactly. Yeah. I want the house. You know how to get there.
Yes.
Just if I need to sign a piece of paperwork, send it to me and I'll get it done, as quickly as I can. But no, they were great. Awesome. Absolutely phenomenal team of people. And
you guys are all moved in now?
We're 99% there.
You sleeping there yet?
Yes.
Okay, so it's official.
Yes.
Nice.
Yep.
Cool. There you go.
We were sleeping there first night. As soon as we closed, I was like, we're grabbing the mattress and we're getting in there.
There you go.
But yeah, because I mean, the whole cabin was, basically, boxes all over the living room, everything like that. And it's not very big, in those spaces. So, but no, it's been a great September as far as that phase of life goes. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it does kind of conflict with my favorite season of Alaskan hunting, which is moose. Moose is by far my favorite thing to chase in the state. And, you take some, you lose some each year, and this year I decided plumbing was the more important.
It's a good priority.
I think it's okay that you haven't had a good moose season. It's not going to pan out.
Well, and the cool thing with Alaska, and we talk about this all the time, is there's always something to chase, right? Like it's not like you're missing your one chance at killing something. So, there's always that balance between what needs to happen for real life and what we can do to support ourselves. And my primary means of or primary motivation for hunting is meat, and luckily we do still have a pretty full freezer from other things that we've been able to take over the years. So it's we're not like in any kind of dire straits where it's like I need this moose to make it through the winter.
Yet?
No, no. And there's multiple caribou opportunities still. There's later moose seasons. I mean, and we'll be done and over with before the end of moose season, anyways. In certain areas of the state, so I still have plenty of time to get out there and make potential trips. So I'm not worried about it too much. But no, it's been good. It's been a real blessing. God's been blessing us left and right. And, sometimes it's hard to keep up with all those blessings, and you got to do your share and put the work in too. But, man, I can't complain. I can't complain at all.
And receiving and not appreciating what you're receiving.
Right.
Me again.
Now I know what Trump was talking about when he was like, we're going to get tired of winning. We're going to get tired of winning. I'm like, man, everything in life is going so good, but yeah, anyways. But yeah, so how about you, Carson? How's your September been?
My September has been very domestic. Very domestic. Yeah. So my wife's birthday is August 31st. And so I got a sheep hunt in, and we'll touch on that. Mm-hmm. But that was my main focus for the year, is like, I am come hell or high water, I'm going sheep hunting.
Yeah.
And I did that and had a great time. That was my first sheep hunt. And my backup I guess my plan was just like, I'll just casually moose hunt. I'm not going to burn a bunch of PTO and go, set a really nice moose camp, which I will eventually.
Yep.
I'll buzz around town and poke around and all that. And so that was kind of my plan. My wife's birthday was August 31st, and her father called me, maybe, a week before her birthday. And was like, I was thinking about buying Lily this cool puppy for her birthday. What do you think? And at first I was like, nope, not ready. And we love dogs, but I love, having no responsibilities for a long time, just my wife and I. And so first I was like, nope, we're out. Like, thanks, something else. And then I thought about it more that night. I'm like, that would be pretty cool, and so called him back and long story short, he bought this fox red lab puppy.
Oh, wow. Fox red, huh?
Oh, do you know what a fox red lab is?
No.
It's like kind of a rusty color. So it's a lab. It's a bloodline wise, it's a lab. But instead of a yellow lab, it's like this dark red.
No kidding.
Yeah, I'll show you some pictures.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
he's cute little. So
that is a cool puppy. I was curious
what pictures you posted. I was like, man, I've had the dog bug lately, but I'm like,
yeah,
kid's good. That'll do it.
Yeah, you got a kid, so we don't have those yet. So we're still practicing.
A lot easier.
Well put.
Best part.
Well put.
Anyways, so we've been looking out for this puppy for most of September and not wanting to just like ditch my wife. Be like, all right, you deal with this little domestic terrorist now. Like, I'll see you later. And then my like best friend in the whole wide world. I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding. We've been buddies since he was born and raised here, but we've been buddies since we were in diapers. Literally, like I have pictures of us in diapers.
Nice.
And he joined the Navy he went through the ROTC program at Iowa State.
Okay, yeah,
and graduated that and got his commission in the Navy. And his whole life, he's the only person I know that's done this. When you're 5, 6, I want to be a vet. I want to be this or that.
Right.
His whole thing and his whole life is like, I want to fly fighter pilots for the Navy.
No kidding.
And he flies fighter pilots for the Navy. And
that's awesome.
He just graduated Top Gun school.
Wow.
And as a little bit of a congrats, man. That's like your top of the top sort of thing. They kind of surprised and like gave him a couple extra weeks leave, like totally free.
Nice.
And so he called me like August 28th. He's like, hey man, what are you doing? And we're BSing and he says, well, I got like 2 extra weeks. Like, what are you doing in September? I'm like, dude, come on. I can't miss that opportunity. So there's always going to be more moose.
Yeah.
So they just left last night on the red eye. And so that's
right on.
All that to say that I've driven around with a bow in my truck, but I have not actually given it, giving it the old college try. So that's about it. And it's ended there. And then as we were talking, before the show, the day before he was supposed to come, I was like, all right, Lily, it's my wife. I'm going moose hunting today. It's like, oh yeah, where are we going to put a moose? I'm like, well, good point. I'll buy a freezer. I'll go to Lowe's, Home Depot. I'll find Facebook Marketplace. It'll be fine. She goes, oh yeah, where are you going to put a new freezer? Oh, you got me there too. So I have a full like chest freezer that is full of beavers right now. So I need to clean those, get them salted, and get them over to Rob and just deal with it. But it is full of nothing but beaver pelts and one full giant beaver that I'm saving for spring bear season if I can make it through.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
Are they all fleshed out?
They're fleshed. I just need to salt them.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. No, that's an important way to go. I mean, salt dried is the way to do it. And and we had Rob on the show earlier. We were talking about that before. Yeah, he's a great dude.
I want to sidetrack real quick and just touch on him. Rob, he this is my first year kind of dealing with fur and all that, and so I called him because I needed him tanned, and he's like, hey man, just salt them. Like, it's going to be cheaper for you. It's better.
Yep.
And then I said, do you do the same thing for bears? Because I'm really excited about this upcoming spring bear season. And he said, yeah, salt them and then bring them to me and you'll be good. And I'm like, well, I don't really. What if you don't know how to skin a bear? And he's like, oh man, just bring it on over. And like, well, I won't charge you for it, but I'll walk you through it and have you do it, but I'll just be over your shoulder type of thing. Just wanted to give him a shout out for that because I thought that was really like he was genuinely just wanting to help me, and he didn't know me from Adam. I called him on a random Thursday afternoon or whatever, and had no idea who I was, but was really, really willing to pour into me and be like, hey, I'll show you how to do this. It's super easy once you get the hang of it. Like, no problem. So just wanted to give him a shout out. I thought that was, again, he had no idea, still has no idea who I am. But he was really genuinely nice guy. So just wanted to give him a shout out and thanks for that.
No, that's one thing about Rob is he's all smiles. Every time I've ever run into him, talked to him and everything, been over to his shop, he's all smiles. Yeah. It's like, It's always fun. It's always happy. And he does a great job of helping new guys.
Nice.
We were talking, he's part of that program with Wainwright where you guys can go over there and work with him. He's been through the same thing, coming to Alaska and being the new guy and learning how to do stuff. So, it's when you understand what that is like, being in a new place, in a new environment.
Yep.
It's like when those kinds of people have that willingness to help, it makes a whole world of difference.
Absolutely.
So for everybody's experience.
Yep.
Let's get into a little bit of your backstory here. So you actually grew up in Fairbanks, right?
Yeah, I did. Okay, so I was born and raised here. Actually born in North Pole. So I kind of was, raised there till I was 9-ish. But the whole reason, I'm up here is my dad was an Air Force officer.
Yep.
And so we got stationed out at Eielson. And so that's how we got up here. And he was working at the Pentagon at the time. And they came up here on a cruise vacation thing, like most people who experience Alaska do.
Right.
And you guys have talked about it on the show before, but Alaska's got a way of just getting its hooks in you and not letting go ever. And
even if you want it to.
Yeah, exactly. For better or worse.
Yeah.
And so they came up here on a cruise or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And I was like, oh, let's just do 3 years here. And then I'll take 3 years away from the Pentagon and we'll move up here for a couple of years and then we'll go right back. And because they were living in DC. And Alaska got its hooks in them. And thank goodness for that, because I would not want to be grown up in DC, So yeah, that's how we wound up here. And then lived here my whole life. My love for hunting, I've always hunted. And that's always been a part of my, my family, and my dad hunted, my uncle hunted, and my uncle would come up here and him and my dad would go sheep hunting and all that good stuff. But I really fell into sports. You're just like your normal rough and tumble, American kid, just wanting to play football and hockey and baseball and everything.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that really, I played travel hockey. That was kind of my thing, travel hockey.
Yep.
And for anybody who's listening to this, they'll know the commitment that requires. It's every day. You're practicing every day. You're going to tournaments in Anchorage every weekend, or tournaments here, tournaments there, and
even traveling out of state too, right?
Oh, lots. Yeah. Lots. I mean, it's basically like a full-time job. And being an adult now, I have so much more of an appreciation for my parents for even being willing to do that. Because the last thing that I want to do when I get off work is oh yeah, I'll go sit at a hockey rink for an hour and just watch these 9-year-olds play or whatever. Or oh yeah, I had a hard week at work. It's oh, now I have to drive to Anchorage tomorrow and go and then drive home on Sunday night.
Yeah,
and start all over again on one
hunting.
day. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy. So I got to give another shout out to one of my buddies, Tyrell Palmer. He's a guy we know here in town, and great dude, just a absolute phenomenal guy. And I want to say he's about my age, maybe a skosh older, but around my age. But he's got an army of children. I mean, he started young, met his wife, got married, started a family. And I mean, every time we talk, he's doing this, he's working and he's taking the kids to sports and he's coaching this team and and still somehow has time to
what a stud,
get his bow dialed in and go on this sheep hunt and do this. And I'm like,
he killed a Delta ram a couple of years ago, right?
He did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know who we're talking about. Yeah. It's a nice ram.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I'm like, how in the world? Your time management, he's on it. But
good for him. That's awesome.
Same thing. Cause when I get off work and the side projects I have and stuff like that, it's I couldn't imagine doing travel hockey with my kids or something like that.
Yeah. So like I said, my parents are total, and I've only come to realize that in the last, 5, 6 years, maybe, like total saints for even being willing to do that. And then I'll also add that my brother did the same thing. So oftentimes it was like, I'm going this direction, my brother's going this direction.
Oh, really?
Like it was chaos, man. It was chaos. But all that to say, didn't really do a ton of hunting. We went duck hunting a lot. My dad really liked duck hunting.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And while he was up here, probably pre-kids, and when we were young, like, he's got, a 65-inch moose and sheep and bears and all that. He got to do a lot of that. And then just life just kind of, grabbed us all, in sports specifically. So, duck hunted here and there when there wasn't a practice or a tournament. And then I think I went moose hunting maybe once or twice. And one was a really fun, like I'll never forget it. It was a proper moose camp and, hot tent and the whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And it was awesome. Like the stuff that people come to Alaska to do. Like, I did it. But I graduated high school and my dad was, like I said, an officer in the Air Force, and the military was always a matter of when for me, not really an if. It was always something that I just wanted to do. I didn't really know how I was going to do it.
Sure.
And my dad being an officer in the Air Force, you need to join the Air Force. You need to be an officer. They're going to treat you better and all that. And
which they would.
Turns out Dad was right. Like, go figure.
Mine tried the same thing.
Yeah. But, I was 18 and like I said, rough and tumble, and loved all that, like, doing hard stuff and playing sports and all that. So I enlisted in the Army, and so I joined the Guard. I did do that. So I enlisted in the Guard. And my thought was like, I'll get my degree and then I'll be an officer. And I really wanted to be, I was, kind of focused on like joining the Ranger Regiment or, going SF, like doing cool guy stuff.
Right.
That's what I really wanted to do.
Yep.
And this was just kind of a means to get there. And, get some time in and all that. So I did that and decided I wanted to be a medic. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And there's 2 tracks, this, but there's 2 tracks that a medic can take. You can go be a sick call warrior, or you can go, no offense to those people.
Hey, they've gotten me out of work a lot of times. So it's okay.
So no disrespect.
Of course, they made me go to work a lot of times when I was sick too.
Yeah,
so.
You don't look too sick to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, go work in a hospital setting is what I should have said, and go be in a line unit. And that was like my biggest fear was that I was going to get stuck in a hospital setting.
Right.
And so luckily I got stuck with at first it was a Cav Scout platoon and was the medic there and just had a grand time and really loved it. Did that for 2 years, I think. And then this guy that was in the armory all the time, just like a stud of a human being, like Mr. America soldier, like tall, dark, and handsome, Ranger tab on his shoulder, Ranger scroll on his shoulder, just a stud. And he was in the sniper section, and he also went to K-State. So while I was enlisted, I was going to school at Kansas State University.
Really? Which campus?
In Manhattan.
Manhattan?
Yeah.
Nice.
You're a Kansas boy.
I'm from north of Wichita.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You steer clear of Junction City?
Tried. We found myself there a couple times. I don't know how, but
sorry to anybody listening from there.
You said this was a family podcast, right?
Yes, exactly. I've done a lot of construction work in Manhattan area. So
anyway, so met this guy, and just he was also going to K-State, and we'd go to the gym together and all that, and just super cool guy. And he kind of their medic was kind of leaving, and they needed a new medic, and would you be interested in this? I'm like, oh my gosh, of course. And so the last couple years of my enlistment, I only did one, served in the sniper section for the Kansas National Guard, and got to do everything that they got to do, short of going to sniper school. The commander had an issue sending the medic, understandably, I guess now. The commander.
Well, what happens if this guy goes down?
It's like, then you should be working on that guy as the medic, not. Yeah, no, I had those conversations. I tried every angle I could possibly come up with, and some crazy ones that he probably was sick of talking to me by the end of it. But so yeah, I never got to go to sniper school and all that, but. Got to qualify on all the weapons and
good.
And they do their stalking lanes, and then they let me go in there and flub it up and like laugh at me and all that. But got to have some really cool experiences, and that's we talked a little bit offline about shooting, and that's just like, man, that's where my love of shooting came from.
Well, and I'm sure even just hanging out with those guys, I mean, you're probably picking up gold nuggets left and right.
Oh yeah, just like hanging out with anybody, really.
Yeah.
But Chris and I have hung out a couple times now, and it's like drop some gold nuggets that you don't even realize, and I'm like, oh, I'm filing that away. Like, that is a good piece of advice, and it's not go hunt here, but like don't do this or be cognizant of this, those little tips, and I mean, you're amongst some of the in the military wise some of the best shooters. To just rub shoulders with them and learn from them and talk with them, and like that guy's still one of my best friends to this day.
That's
so
awesome.
Pretty cool. But that's where my love of shooting came from, and so got done with that and graduated from K-State, and I was studying a really cool program that some of the listeners might be interested in. It was called Wildlife and Outdoor Enterprise Management.
Oh.
And it's a really unique program, and I know it's a mouthful. To my knowledge, there's only 2 programs in the country.
Oh wow.
that have this style. One, I believe it's Auburn. Don't quote me, but I believe it's Auburn in Alabama and Kansas State University. That was at the time. I don't know if that's true to this day.
Yeah.
But it was just a mix of a bunch of different departments, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole end goal was to prepare you for a career in the outdoor industry, whatever that might look like. And so
awesome.
Some guys and gals went and ran lodges in Connecticut or Kansas. One of my really, really good friends, she's like the manager of the shipping department for the international sales at Glock. Some
kidding.
really, really cool opportunities.
Wow.
But yeah, it just kind of prepared you it varied so much. And I think when I'm not 100% sure on this, but I was pre-10. So I think I was like the 5th or 6th cohort to go through this whole class, to go through this whole program. So it was pretty fresh. And so really like kind of made my own opportunities, and really I was super nerdy, and I still am to this day, unfortunately, about clothing, like hunting clothing. I don't know why, but like very technical clothing. I am just such a nerd about. It's gross. It really is.
It's a thing to get into. I mean, it's a deep rabbit hole you can go down.
It's like drugs. Yeah. I can't stop.
Especially when you're sitting there cold and wet in moose camp.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Or in a tree stand.
Yeah.
Yep.
I might like to know a little more about this right now.
And so that was kind of always my goal. And so like, your QUs, your Sitkas, your first lights, et cetera, like that was kind of my end goal when I graduated. And I actually got a job offer from First Light, and like, kind of dream come true.
Right.
I'm a male, and I had a girlfriend at the time that was living in Kansas City, and that job was in Idaho, and she did not want to go to Idaho, and I turned it down. And so anyways, I ended up working at...
We've all done it.
Yeah. You're talking about mistakes in your 20s earlier?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of those.
And so I ended up working like for a medical device company in Kansas City for a little while, and lasted like 4 months. I don't know. Like it was like the shortest job I've ever had. So there was a Scheels in Kansas City. Have you guys ever been to a Scheels?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're pretty, they're legit.
Yeah.
They've got a ton of stuff. You can buy Nike shorts for your wife, or like, Night Force optics for you, and like everything in between. They're pretty legit. Anyway, so there was a store in Kansas City, and I hated what I was doing, and I wasn't making any money.
Mm-hmm. That's a bad combo.
Bad combo. Yeah. And so I applied for a part-time gig as just like a bow tech, at the shop, and got in there to the interview, and essentially what happened is my like nerdiness about gear just like flowed out of me, and I couldn't help myself. And they're like, "Would you happen to be interested in running like the hunting clothing shop?" And it's like, "Oh, yes, I would." Like finally. And so get me away from these medical devices. And
right.
So left the gig there, and went over to do full-time work at Scheels, and ran their hunting and clothing department. And so I got to play with, which only fueled the fire, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like the worst thing I could have done financially.
You get to put your hands on every new piece of
Everything.
gear.
Yeah. And like the Sitka reps are coming in and talking to you about this new cool vest that's coming out that now I have to buy. And like the Night Force rep comes in and tells you all about the new Night Force scopes. And it was really fun. And so did that for a while. But the hours in retail just suck. Mm-hmm. If anyone's worked retail, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like I try to this day, like I will not shop on a holiday because like those people are having to work on a holiday because there's demand and I don't want to be fueling that demand.
Yeah.
So I refuse to shop on a holiday. Like it could be Christmas Day. And if we didn't buy the turkey, guess what? We're not having turkey. Like I won't do it. So anyways, didn't like the hours and was just looking for something different. Really liked sales and like getting to have these types of conversations, you know, all day, every day. Yeah. But just the hours sucked. And I was actually still in the Guard at that point. So it was 2 weekends of work. You know, I had to work weekends, 1 weekend of Guard, which left me 1 weekend to play. And that made Carson a sad boy. and so,
I'm familiar with the feeling. Carson sad.
Carson mad.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, we'll get this back on track. Apologies for everybody's listening. We're going somewhere, I promise. So anyway, I was putting feelers out with a bunch of the guys and gals that I went to K-State with. Mm-hmm. And a good friend of mine was working at Dallas Safari Club, which is a nonprofit kind of hunting and conservation organization based out of Dallas. And called him and just checking in and kind of BSing and hanging out. Mm-hmm. And kind of out of the corner of my mouth, like, oh, is DSC hiring by chance? And he goes, yeah, they are actually. Like, they just opened up a job. Like, I don't know if you're qualified for it, but you should apply. And I was like, cool. And applied and got the gig, which was a huge blessing. And so moved down to Dallas from Kansas City. And the role was their, I'm going to screw up the exact title. Basically, it was their chapter services specialist or manager, whatever their version of that was. And so they had a chapter system. I believe when I got there, it was, again, don't quote me, I think it was 8 chapters.
Okay.
So I was in charge of these eight chapters kind of around the country and, helping them with, it's an all-encompassing role, truly, but I was in charge of maintaining the health of these 8 chapters and helping them and being the direct liaison between them and DSC, and then starting new chapters around the country. And so I did that for, I want to say 4 or 5 years. Started a bunch of chapters and had a really great time, and learned a lot about fundraising. That's kind of my that's what I really like to do, is get to be really creative in fundraising. And so if you've ever been to a Ducks Unlimited banquet or a Pheasants Forever banquet or whatever, kind of doing that and setting that up and finding new fun ways to raise revenue. I love that. I really enjoy that.
And for anybody listening to this, I mean, the season for that's coming up. You know, like after all these hunting seasons get growing, it's like, that's, keep an eye out, because these fundraisers are going to start popping up.
Yeah. So did that, and let's go there. So did that for 4 or 5 years, and then transitioned over to Safari Club International, so SCI.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was a remote gig, which is kind of was super interested in at the time. And and I basically do the same thing. So now I'm the chapter services manager at SCI.
Okay.
And so I oversee all the U.S. chapters, which is about 125.
Wow.
So across the U.S., like from every state. And then I've got a team of guys that work for me as well. And so we've kind of got the U.S. broken into 3 regions right now, basically East Coast, Midwest, and West. And so it's kind of a player coach role, if you will, because I'm managing the team. I oversee all the the functionings in the U.S., but I also have my own region, and my region is the West, so Rocky Mountains West. And speaking of banquets, like January through May, I am moving. I am gone, and this is no exaggeration. Like, I think we'll call it, like, the banquet season is January through May, and I think in that time frame last year, I believe I had 2 or 3 weekends off between January 10th ish and May 24th.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's all the time.
So your late winter into spring is just clobbered.
Yeah, and for a guy who just moved back and like wanted to just explore all the ways to get outside and just happened to fall in love with trapping and think that's like the coolest thing in the world. It's like the worst thing I could do for myself. Just every time I'm getting on a plane, I'm looking over the Tanana, like, oh man, that looks like a wolf track or a wolf trail. Like that is so cool. And it's like, well, I'm going to California or Montana or whatever. It could be worse, but
so you help with the coordination of like all of these fundraisers.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're going like from city to city to city? Like is it like a back-to-back kind of thing, or do you get to come? Oh wow.
Well, I mean, it is back-to-back. Sorry, I do get to come home, but I get to come home on Sunday night, and then I work through Thursday, and I jump on a plane Monday, and just repeat that process. And so it's 7 days a week because you come home from a trip and you're writing reports and doing expense reports and following up with the chapter that just had an event. Looking forward into next weekend and, checking in with the chapters that are the chapter that you're going to be attending, and then the 3 or 4 chapters that you're not going to be able to attend because there's only one of you.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, hey, do you guys have everything you need? Do you have this? We sent this. Did you get it? Blah, 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 blah.
Gotcha.
So it's, I think last year.
It's a lot of logistics to keep lined up.
Yeah, it is. It is. And we have an awesome team. We built an awesome team there, and the folks that we have working there are awesome. SCI as an organization is really awesome. I'm not just saying this. I'm not just blowing smoke because I work for SCI. We have 8 attorneys on staff full time. It's like the way that they pay their bills is by fighting for our rights as hunters.
Oh,
and that's
awesome.
In my opinion, that's where the real, we can all post things on Instagram and conservation hashtag and blah 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 blah, which is cool and like there's a that's useful in some regard, but getting into those courtrooms and being legislatively active.
Yes.
That's where we're going to win because that's where they're beating us currently.
It's true.
And so we've got that team and they're powerhouses.
And the thing with the antis is they're organized too.
Much.
We talk about that a lot on the show, how, the hunting community as a whole is somewhat fractured.
Yeah.
And you get these guys that have this like, I don't want to call it a seniority complex, but like they feel like they just do their thing and they don't need anybody else. They don't want anybody else involved.
Yep.
I don't want new hunters getting involved because they're going to be clustering the woods and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And you can't just sit on your couch and go on your hunts and then come home and not be involved with this fight.
Yep.
Because you might only be interested in your moose and your sheep area, say. Maybe those are your 2 bread and butter hunts for the year.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're coming after this caribou hunt, in somewhere else, or they're coming after this management practice and they're, the antis are just anti. They don't care if it's sheep. They don't care if it's moose. They don't care if it's caribou. They don't care if it's white-tailed deer, mule deer, anything. They're after it. And being organized the way that they are, they, like you said, they're in the courtroom.
Yep.
They're filing lawsuits. They're doing it while you're sitting on your couch.
Yep.
Looking on these Instagram posts, maybe you even like the post.
Mm-hmm.
They're pulling legislative moves.
Yeah.
And it's crazy when, you'll hear about a comment period where the public gets to come in and comment and nobody's showing up.
Yep.
Like, so what does the court have to work with?
Yep.
You got to be involved.
Absolutely.
Sounds pretty relevant to modern day politics overall.
Just kind of in general.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a team of powerhouse attorneys on staff.
That's awesome.
Like we don't farm that out which a lot of organizations are very legislatively active, but they'll farm it out just because they don't have the staffing to do it.
Sure.
We have an office in Washington D.C., like 5 minutes away from the Senate building, and like that's where those people live. And thank God for them. I'm not an attorney, and don't pretend to be. That would be bad for everybody. But they're awesome, and SCI does a really good job. And again, this is my opinion, and I'm coming at this from having seen the backside, the inner operations, really does a good job of activating their membership. And so we've got about 50,000, I think it's 47,000, something like that members, in all 50 states and in a bunch of countries. And they do a very good job of alerting you to issues that might be happening in your state, in your region, et cetera.
Yeah.
And helping activate those members. Because a lot of times, a lot of people, I think a lot of hunters in general, they want to comment, they want to get active, but like if that's not your world,
right?
Or if you're coming home from working a 60-hour work week and you see something on Instagram, you're like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. It's like, no, you're not. You're not going to do it,
right?
And I understand why, because you're beat.
Yes,
but
yeah, it's not a malicious or negligent thing that you're not doing it.
Yeah, yeah, you're going to forget.
Yeah,
or you're going to talk yourself out of it because you don't know how to, or you need to type this comment. You're like, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
And so we do a really good job of giving people opportunities to be active themselves.
Awesome.
And another kind of moniker, Safari Club International. A lot of folks will look at Peter Safari Club and be like, I'm not really I'm not a big African guy, and like that's never going to be me. Maybe there's no interest. Maybe it's a financial thing.
Sure.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
For whatever the reason, people sometimes turn their nose away at it, and I understand. But we do an extraordinary amount of work here in the United States, and so if you are a hunter, doesn't matter if you're hunting squirrels or doll sheep, or stone sheep. Like if you are a hunter in North America, in the United States, like we are working on your behalf. Doesn't matter if you're a member or not; those fights are happening.
Right.
And the more members that you have, the bigger stick. You have more stroke.
Absolutely.
I'm representing 50,000 members, or I'm representing 150,000 members.
Right.
And so, for people who are, on the fence, or maybe have thought that about SCI, it's like, just take a minute and think about that. Let that sink in for a second. These fights are happening.
Yeah.
Whether or not you're a member, and, more power to you. But we become more effective as an organization, and we become way more effective as a culture, I guess, when we're organized and when we carry a bigger stick.
Well, and I think a lot of people also get the misunderstanding of these kind of organizations where it's like, oh, that's just a trophy book, set up, or oh, that's just this, or oh, that's just about bragging rights, and oh, my sheep ranked here, and it's like, it's more than that. And even that, I mean, if you look back on the history of any of where these ranking systems came from, it was all in an effort to actually for conservation. It was for getting people to chase those bigger, mature animals, and stop killing the spikes that were breeding.
Yep.
And kind of create that culture of chasing the bigger animals.
Sure.
Because those are the ones that have already passed on their genetics and stuff like that.
Yep.
But there's so much more behind just the record books and behind just the everything else in these organizations, be it SCI or really any of them.
Yep.
And it's kind of concerning to me almost when you look at like the numbers across the country of hunting licenses that are put out. I mean, it's in the millions. Millions of hunting licenses are purchased throughout the state, or throughout all the states every year. And when you're talking 50,000 members, when millions of people are getting hunting licenses, it's like,
there's room for everybody.
More people need to get involved.
Yep. And if you don't know how to get involved, I don't want this to come off as like just get them signed up for SCI. Find a chapter, find a local chapter in your area. Whether that be, I would love if it was an SCI chapter, and we probably have one in your area. But even if it's a Ducks Unlimited chapter or Pheasants Forever chapter, just get involved.
Yeah,
like in some way, shape, or form. Just get involved. We can't just take.
Yeah,
without giving back.
Yeah.
And so whether that be, I call it the 3 T's: time, talent, or treasure. But man, just find an avenue to give back.
Yeah,
and I think if we all did that, the world would look very different.
Yeah, and especially if we want to preserve our culture and our passion.
Yeah,
because I mean, we've seen how quickly opportunities can just disappear.
Look at Colorado. Look at Colorado right now.
Yep.
They had wolves last year or whatever it was reintroduced, and then now they are on the ballot is losing lion hunting, and that includes bobcat, a lot of predators. Basically, they've already lost. I think arguably the best management tool that we have for bears is spring bear hunting.
Yep,
for a lot of reasons. they haven't had a spring bear hunt since Colorado.
Yeah.
I believe it was the 90s. Don't quote me, but sometime in the 90s. So like,
no kidding.
The best management tool to manage a predatory species.
Yeah.
And by the way, Colorado has the largest elk herd in the world. It was removed, and we no longer have that ability.
Yeah.
So,
well, and now they're limiting the elk hunting there too.
They are.
Yeah.
So, yep. And they introduced wolves, and I mean,
Yep.
We're very active in Colorado. Very active in Colorado.
Are you guys tracking what's been going on? I think it's Idaho that's been fighting the bear baiting.
Yes.
I think there's 3 lawsuits going on about that right now. Yeah. I've been trying to keep up on that as much as I can.
It's a full-time job, man.
Yeah.
It
really
I mean,
is.
even just in Alaska, like even just if you were to, being a resident, even if you were just try and maintain a working knowledge on everything that's happening in the state of Alaska, you would run yourself ragged just doing that.
Oh yeah.
And then you have the federal side.
Yeah.
Like, so, I mean, there's a lot here. There's a lot at play, but we have, so in addition to those attorneys, we have state and federal liaisons. And so, like I just said, it's like dang near a full-time job to track all those things. SCI said, yes, it is. And so we have 2 state liaisons.
Okay.
And so their job is to track, pieces of state legislation that might affect our members and either, working against them or for them. And we also have a federal liaison. So his whole job in life is, and I'm oversimplifying this quite a bit, but generally, his job is to track, do the same thing from the federal side of the house. So yeah, like we are incredibly politically, or we'll just call it advocacy.
Sure. Yeah.
We're very active in that world, and so that's very unique to conservation organizations or hunting organizations that I'm aware of. And then from the, my world, chapter land is what we kind of call it. From a chapter land perspective, a lot of these other organizations, the money might be raised in Fairbanks, but it's going to go 100% of it. Yeah. It's going to go back to the mothership. That doesn't happen at SCI. And so we have 2 chapters here in Alaska. And so I'll just speak. This is the Northern Hunter podcast. So we'll talk about them. They raise their money in Anchorage and Kenai.
Okay.
And 70% of that revenue stays in Anchorage and the Kenai.
Awesome.
And only 30% of it goes to the mothership. And the lion's share of that 30% goes to fighting these fights.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like it's not going to jets or parties or whatever other stories people tell themselves.
Their new Cadillacs and stuff. Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, no. It's getting put to good use.
Yeah.
And then the other 70% is the chapters to do with what they choose. So that might be over in Africa, but it might be a shooting range in Soldotna, right? Or it might be a research project or what have you. And so if you're more interested in the state side of things, like, hey, there's opportunities for you to get involved in that regard. And then finally, it's just an awesome way to make friends.
Yeah.
I don't, you can't rely on other people for your happiness, but it makes it a heck of a lot easier when you got good people around you.
It sure does. Yeah. The ones that have your same values, your same passions, things
absolutely.
like that.
You can learn from them. And especially if you're new to the state, and there's a lot of those people every year, new to the state from the military, man, find a chapter, find some way to get plugged in and connected, and you're going to enjoy it so much more, especially if you're only here for 3 years.
Right. Well, and in the state too, I mean, just interstate, in-state, there's so many different ways to get involved, and one thing I really like is I've been involved with the AC, the Fairbanks AC for the last 3 years. And I started going to that because of all these complaints. I'm like, man, I wish I knew what was going on with the regs. I don't know why this is changing or that, blah, blah, blah. And these people are like your representatives that go to the board of game, that go to the board of fish, that fight for what we want as the local hunters of the area. And you just get to sit in, you hear the reports from all this research, you get to hear the harvest reports from biologists, you get to hear, what people's thoughts are on fixing certain problems and whatnot, and what proposals are going to go up to the board of game or the board of fish. And when you are involved, you can sign up for the email list, and then you get emails on everything that's happening. I mean, I get emails all the time on different subcommittee meetings and what the notes from those meetings were, and what legislation's coming out and what we're fighting and things like that. It's a great way to get involved. That's low effort, really. I mean, a lot of these things, the meetings aren't very long. They're once a month. You're going to get emails straight to your inbox that keep you informed. You're not going to a clustered website with really bad layout that you're trying to sort through 10 different pages to get to the information you want. It's just all right there.
Yep.
With the proper links and everything. And just on a local level, that's a good way to get involved.
I mean, if you're going to spend $20,000 on a new jet boat to go moose hunt, you can probably spend an hour learning about it and fighting for it.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. So, no, I think all of these groups are amazing. So, and I really encourage people to get involved.
Absolutely. So, and if you have any questions about it, anybody who's listening, well, I'll drop my social media or whatever. And
sure. Yeah.
And feel free to reach out. And you won't get a car salesman pitch, I promise.
There we go. Well, let's take our first break real quick, and then we'll keep going.
Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 3378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure.
All right, so we covered a lot of ground in that first section there. I notice you've bounced around quite a bit. So I had two questions. One, what made you join the Kansas Guard versus like the Alaska Guard, and what brought you back up to Alaska?
Good question. So,
because I did the opposite. I left Kansas and came here.
Yeah. So we always had family in the like my whole family's from Ohio, like the Midwest, and always loved going down there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it was time to like go to college or pick a college or whatever, kind of just wound up, like kind of focused on the Midwest.
Okay. Yep.
And went and visited a bunch of schools down there, and I just fell in love with K-State.
Yeah,
and
it's a cool school.
There's deer, like you can shoot 180-inch deer 20 minutes from K-State, the campus, like legitimately. You could have a shot.
Yeah, they got a lot more public land on that side of the state, I think.
There's some sleeper spots, like little 30 acres here, 40 acres there, and there's like you put a trail cam there, and you're like, what in the world? I have some pretty cool stories I could share about that.
Nice.
Sorry, I lost where I was. So yeah, visited a bunch of schools and then just happened to wind up at K-State. Just really liked the campus, liked the hunting opportunity. There's a couple, they'd call them dams, I guess.
Okay.
And where they just flood everything out. And so
like
Milford,
reservoirs.
Yeah, reservoir. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, thank you. Reservoirs out there.
We used to sail on those.
Yeah, and so there's a couple of reservoirs out there where you can just go have you shoot like mid-December mallards out there that are just full plumed and fat from the cornfields.
Yeah,
and great times out there. And in addition to the deer, in addition to the turkey, in addition to the mule deer, in addition to the pronghorn, like Kansas is a sleeper state, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. So wound up at K-State just by total happenstance, and I was originally studying pre-med.
Okay.
And then that's kind of why I became a medic, and was like, I wanted to be an MD and like join the Ranger Regiment. It was kind of my goal.
Yep. Gotcha.
And then found the bars and and not totally, but just
happens to the best of us.
just life changed a little bit, and it was no longer a goal, and to kind of change gears a little bit, and totally happened to be going to one of two schools in the nation that had a program like I was just telling you about.
Right. Yeah. I was curious if that played into your selection of getting the
not initially.
Not at all.
Total, like I'm a faithful man. And like there's been several times in my life where it's like, how in the world did this coincidence happen? Yep. It's like it wasn't a coincidence, and that's certainly one of those times where it's just like
Absolutely.
Man, I got lucky, and just lucked into it.
Yeah.
So that's
awesome.
So that was, what was your second question?
Just kind of like, so you went from there, obviously ended up in KC and then down in Dallas, and you got with the SCI.
Yep.
And what brought you back to Fairbanks?
Oh.
I mean, what, motivated that move home?
Yeah. So really got bit by like the hunting bug in college. I was always, like I said, I would always identify, as a hunter if someone asked me, but it was never something that I was like disgustingly obsessed with like I am now. And, but I would always identify as a hunter. And, sorry, I was going to make a joke there, but I'm glad I didn't. Really got bit by it hard in college.
Yeah.
And,
did you do a lot of hunting around there?
Yeah, I really, and I had some good people that showed me the ropes of whitetail hunting. And I'm the world's worst whitetail hunter, but it's a lot of fun.
It is. Yeah.
And for every time you see a giant buck, it just hooks you that much more. And then
they got big ones in Kansas.
There's a lot of people think there's a 180 behind every tree, which is not the case.
No.
But legitimately, you could be going to K-State right now and drive 30 minutes and have a shot, an opportunity to shoot a 160 plus class whitetail with your bow.
Yeah.
And make it to your 9:30 or not class in the morning.
Right.
That's a real thing at K-State, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think Meat Eater a couple of years ago did like a ranking of schools for the best hunting opportunity, I think. And I think K-State was number one.
Nice.
So like just another weird hand of God moment where it's like I just happened to go to the best school with the hunting opportunity that I wasn't as obsessed with as I am now.
Sure. Yeah.
So really got bit by the hunting bug in college, and kind of was kicking myself in the butt the whole time. As I'm hunting whitetail and mule deer, and I really liked heading out to Western Kansas and doing that. A really good time.
Yeah.
But was just kicking myself. Man, you lived in Alaska your whole life, and like you hadn't even shot a moose at that point.
Yep.
And or sheep, and all these things. Gosh, you dummy. And so that kind of stuck in the back of my head, and I was always trying to find an angle to go on a sheep hunt. That was going to be my big thing. I was saving up for a sheep hunt. And I might screw the year up. In 2019, 2020, my uncle calls me out of the blue, and my uncle's a sheep hunter. Like he's got a slam number, whatever. Like,
oh, nice.
Just had a really good luck hunting.
Yeah. No, that's awesome to complete one of those slams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so called me totally out the blue one day, and I was driving to work. He goes, "Hey, you want to go mountain goat hunting?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Why? Like, of course. Why? Like, how is it? Yes. And why are you asking me this?
Right.
Of course, the answer is yes. And he's like, "Well, I bought this mountain goat hunt from, I think it was Grand Slam Club. Don't quote me. I bought this from an auction, and it's only good for this year, but I'm having health problems and I can't go.
Oh.
Like, if you just pick up the rest of the tab type of thing, it's yours." And I was like, done. And he told me how much it was and whatever, and like, done.
Yep.
And it was in like 2 months, by the way, like right now. And so I also bought a moose tag and a caribou tag, because they have mountain caribou up there. So totally different subspecies of they're not the barren ground caribou that we have here. Is that right? Did I get that?
Yeah. We got barren ground here.
Yep.
There is one herd of woodland caribou, but they're not a huntable herd.
Okay.
It's subsistence only hunt.
Okay.
But
so decided I was going mountain goat hunting, and I was going to add on an animal. And this is in BC, by the way, in British Columbia.
Okay, yeah. Canadian hunt.
Yep. And I was going to add on either a moose or a caribou, but I didn't want to, open the tent fly and see it, a giant moose and have a caribou tag, or vice versa. So I just bought both. Like that was the cheaper option, I thought.
Do they do the trade-in tag system kind of like Alaska does at all, or no?
No.
Okay.
No, you had to have one for each.
That animal.
As far as I know, anyways.
Gotcha.
I had one for each. So
gotcha. Yeah.
Anyway, we go on, the hunt starts, and we hike up. We got dropped off with a float plane, and we hike up, and I've had terrible luck with footwear the last like 5-6 years. I never played hockey my whole life, never had a blister. Joined the military like did 12-mile rucks and all that good stuff. Like never had a blister.
Yeah.
And now I can't hike up a hill or a mountain without just my feet just falling apart on me, despite what boots I wear. So literally have a blister on each heel within like the first hour of a 10-day hunt. And I'm like, well, this is gonna suck.
Yeah. That's the worst, man. In every step, it's just
yeah. And so we hike up to the kind of out of this lake bed and stay the night at this really old school, like it's like a trapper's cabin, basically, something you'd see around in the state.
Nice.
And stand there for a night, and then we take off, and we get to this top of the saddle, kind of peer over, and sure as heck, there's 2 goats there, and made a play on them, and ended up shooting a goat.
Nice.
And this was one of the times in my life where I'm really happy that I like to shoot as much as I do, because this was on a borrowed rifle, by the way. It happened to be a Tikka, and for those listening, I'm a huge Tikka fanboy.
Yep.
Happened to be a Tikka, but it was a right-handed Tikka. I'm a left-handed shooter.
Oh.
I'm right-hand dominant, left-eye dominant.
Okay. Yep.
So it was a left-hand or a right-handed Tikka, which I'm super comfortable with. It was I believe a Huskama scope, which is very reliable and good scope. And long story short, the shot ended up being, I had to shoot him a couple times, but I think the whole shebang started at 430.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
And I felt totally comfortable with that rifle and that scope and all that.
Yeah.
And ended up being a great goat.
Yeah.
And day one, day 0, we walked in basically, and I destroyed my feet. Those are the two eventful moments there. And then day 1, destroyed my feet even more, and then shot a goat.
That's worth it then.
Oh yeah. And hiked the goat out and all that the next morning, and go back to the cabin, and it's like, well, do we want to? And there's caribou everywhere, and these are mountain caribou, which is cool subspecies.
Mm-hmm. How long were you scheduled to be out there?
9 days.
9 days.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You got plenty of time now.
Plenty of time. And the worst, the worst of it's over, so to speak, in terms of terrain.
Right.
It's over. And let's go chase moose. That would be kind of cool to shoot a Canadian moose. That'd be kind of neat. Unique. Not a lot of people in Alaska anyways, have that I know of have, hunted Canadian moose. Like, let's go do that.
Yeah.
And we sit in the rain, just like moose hunting up here, sit in the rain for 3 days and get, just rained on for 3 days straight, playing cards and just trying to stay warm and dry. And we're playing cards. I'll never forget. We're playing cards. And the 2 guys that I'm with, the guide is from New Zealand and the packer is from New Zealand. And they're both like, we're all within like 1 or 2 years of each other. So we were just having a ball. Like, we were just having a blast out in the woods. And we're like, I don't know, I think I'm 24, 25, 26 at the time. And they're all right in that same area. So there's like just turned into like 3 really good buddies, just like tromping around the woods in Canada. Like, none of us are residents of for, 10 days. So we're playing cards and I'm like, I keep hearing something. And I'm like, what? I'm hearing something, guys. And this was the 3rd day of calling. I'm like, oh, I won't say it here. They have unique words that they use over there, and
colorful ones.
It's all coming out, and I'm like, no, I'm done. Like, I'm done playing cards till I take a look around and get up and stretch. And we're all huddled under this tarp with a little fire, and get up and stretch. And there's a bull just destroying this tree like 300 yards away, and we got to play that whole. For as big as a moose is, they are deceptively good at hiding.
Oh, yes.
And like, just played that cat and mouse game with him. He'd walk away, and then we'd find that sweet spot of a cow call or that bull grunt. He'd turn around and come back, but he would never fully commit. And ended up shooting him at like 80 yards, which was super fun.
Nice.
And then that's it. And I think this was day 6 at this point, 5, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're kind of done hunting, and we waited a couple days to tell the outfitter so that he wouldn't come in and disrupt our bro time in the woods, basically.
I mean, you paid for the time, and if you're having fun, you might as well ride it out, right?
Yeah, I know a lot of folks, and I understand it. They're super busy executives or whatever, and they want to get in and get out. And I was like, no, how about we don't tell him, and like we just ride this out for a couple days and just have a ball. So that's what we did. anyway, we eventually tell him, and he comes in and flies in, and like, well, let's go caribou hunt. And I'm like, dude, I'm gonna go home and eat ramen for like the rest of my life at this point. Like, there's no shot, And we've just been seeing monster caribou everywhere, like just monster caribou. And he's like, well, could you do it in a year? Like, pay me in a year, like over time, like it's installments. Like, and we kind of worked it out literally on an airstrip.
Nice.
Literally, like we're just on an airstrip in the middle of nowhere. And yeah, I'm going to be eating ramen for a lot longer than I thought, but yeah, I can do that, And it's like, all right, done. Like, get out of here, go caribou hunt. And we did.
Yeah.
And ended up shooting a really cool mountain caribou.
Awesome,
that, like,
dude.
Really, like, that was the coolest part of the whole trip for me was that caribou hunt.
Really?
And I think we had 2 days to get it done. And the first day, we're pretty confident because, like I said, we've just been seeing caribou everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
We had beautiful weather the whole time except for that one day, and it just socked in, and it was nasty. And we wake up in the morning and kind of peer out of the tent and unzip the vestibule, and there's a bull like herding these cows off the tip top of the mountain down towards us, kind of in a roundabout way through a saddle that we're next to. And so we're literally just in our tents, and it was a good bull. And so we're in our tents, like putting our boots on and like still in our long johns and boxers and all that. And they disappear over the saddle, and we just take off, and we're just running. And we have no idea, it's probably 150 yards, 200 yards to the saddle. And there was a little bit of water in the saddle. And I think that's what slowed him down. But I mean, he was pushing these cows hard.
Gotcha.
He was pushing these cows. And they must have slowed up for that water. And it was one of those times where when an animal and you see each other at the same time, there's like this weird standoff moment.
Yep.
That's what it was at like 50 feet.
Wow.
Like 50 feet, like very, very close.
Like you came around this bend and it was just right there.
Yeah. Like both of our eyes probably got the size like saucers, like at the same time. And I just flopped down on my belly and shot him. Like, I don't even remember, I don't remember seeing him through the scope. It was one of those instinctual times, And yeah, that was that.
Again, why be grateful why you shoot so much?
Yeah.
So you have that muscle memory and that everything.
There you go.
Yep.
And yeah, so
awesome.
In 9 days, I had shot a mountain goat, a Canadian moose, and a mountain caribou. And it was...
That's a trip of a lifetime right there.
No, it 100% was.
Yeah.
100% was. And I got to hang out with these 2 Kiwis for 9 days. And we were like the best of friends after this. And one of them's coming up, actually. Oh, he would be a good guy to jump on the podcast, by the way,
sure.
if he's in town.
Yeah.
He's coming to Alaska one of them's coming to Alaska in October. And
nice.
They're awesome people. Super cool guys. And just had like the trip of a lifetime. And yeah, no two ways about it. So to back up just a month or two. So this all happened in September. In August, my dad was turning 60 and really wanted to go hunt pronghorn. And so found a couple landowners tags in New Mexico and bought, my brother, my dad, and I all bought a tag each. Like, oh, we're going to go hunt pronghorn in New Mexico. Nice. I had no idea. I'd never hunted pronghorn. Actually, I'd hunted pronghorn in Kansas one time, but never judged a pronghorn or anything,
Right.
Had no idea where. I was told there was pronghorn on this ranch, and so we went. And it ended up being just like a sweet spot. And my brother and I both shot Boone and Crockett pronghorn for our very first pronghorn.
No kidding.
So that was in August. This trip in BC happens in September. And then I had pulled a Colorado mule deer tag for October. And
you're really eating the ramen at this
point. Yeah. And by the way, it was supposed to only be the pronghorn in August, the Colorado in October.
Right.
And I remember going to my boss, and it was like the last day that you could return a tag. And at this point, the August hunt had already happened, and I think I was waiting for the September hunt. And I was like, this is the last, am I allowed to take this much time off? If it's not okay, you need to tell me now so that I can just give this tag back and not, not throw a huge wrench into things. Anyway, long story short, ended up going to Colorado on it wasn't an over-the-counter mule deer tag. They don't do those in Colorado, but it was a leftover or a secondary draw. And I think they've ended this now, but it used to be that you could put in your first choice was a point, and then you could draw a second choice on your second choice. So you could build a point and hunt the same year.
Oh, okay.
But the unit would be a second choice unit, and there's a reason.
Right.
Anyway, I ended up shooting a nice 4-point mule deer out of that hunt. So I'd killed in 1 year, in 3 months. I had shot half of a North American Super 10, and I hadn't even realized it.
One of which being a Boone and Crockett.
Yes, and
amazing.
And it wasn't my intent. Like, didn't put this together. Hadn't even heard of that for like a year until like a year after that. I
need your luck.
But yeah, had done that in 3 months.
That's amazing.
And
dude.
It was just like, holy cow.
That is amazing.
And so ever since then, a goal of mine has been to accomplish that, to finish the North American Super 10. And so what I have remaining now is an elk, a bear, my arch nemesis, it's either a muskox or a bison, a sheep, and a lion, a mountain lion. And so a lot of those, 4 of those species, 3 of those species, no, 4, including elk, all here in Alaska.
Right.
So I went on that hunt in September and just totally fell in love with being in the Alpine in the North Country.
Yeah.
In that North Country. I've been in the Alpine in Colorado and Wyoming and Montana and some of these other places. But there's just something about that North Country. Maybe it's because I was born and raised here. I don't know.
Right.
But it just grabbed me hard, really hard. And so ever since that point, I was like, I have to go. I want to go sheep hunt in Alaska. Like you have, that's where I want to kill my ram for this North American Super 10 goal. In the back of my mind, but it'd be really cool to move back to Alaska. But I just didn't ever really see it happening, you know? And so at the very least, I was going to go kill a ram in Alaska. And that's how I was going to do that, accomplish this goal. And so since that point, I'd been stashing away, $3,000 here a year, $4,000 a year, $2,000 a year, whatever, building up the coffers to throw down on a sheep hunt. And then got the job here at SCI, which is remote. And my wife, who was born and raised in Dallas, by the way, had been here a couple different times, including the winter. We didn't love Dallas. We were just kind of looking for something new, right?
Yeah.
I think she was looking for something new. I knew what I was looking for. And so we I got this remote job, and it's like, we don't have kids. This is the time. Do we want to just burn the ships and just try it?
Right. Yeah. Because if it goes south, then you start over somewhere else.
Yeah.
And,
like we'll be okay.
There's no 3-year-olds getting drug around.
Exactly. We don't have pets. We don't have we don't have kids. Like, this is the time if we're ever going to do it, this is the time.
Yeah.
And so we did it. And we decided we were going to do it, but we didn't know where. And so we were between, I need an airport. I need a Wi-Fi connection in an airport to like make my living, basically.
Yeah.
And we were between Casper, Wyoming, and Fairbanks here in Fairbanks. And
Casper's a pretty area too.
Oh, Casper's. And Wyoming is an awesome state for resident hunting opportunities.
Oh yeah.
Like short of Alaska, I don't think there's any other state I'd rather. If I could choose.
They've got a similar population density too.
Yes.
I mean, realistically.
Yes.
So a lot of wide open public lands and stuff.
Yep. And we went and visited Casper, my wife and I, and actually got to we have some really good friends in Casper. And the wife of my buddy drew a pronghorn tag, so we got to like accompany them on this pronghorn hunt. And she'd never even seen a pronghorn at that point in her life.
Nice.
And you got to do that. And it was beautiful, but it was nuking wind the entire time, as it does in Casper. And
it's one of the only states with a higher average wind speed than Kansas, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that. Yeah. And it's snowing, so it's just nuking really cold wind. and so she loved it, and she was interested, and we get back and we're talking, and she's like, I think we should do Alaska. I'm like, are you sure? Yeah, I think we should do Alaska. Okay. And then the very next day I had like found the house we were going to buy, like had the whole move plan, like it was done. Like I had it all done. So we moved back in June of 23, and that was strategic so that I would be a resident, because for those who don't know, it's not like you move to Kansas and you become a resident or some of these other states. as soon as you get your driver's license, there's like a year-long, for lack of a better term, probationary period.
Right.
Where you are a resident of the state of Alaska, and I, have a resident driver's license, and for basically everything but awesome hunting tags and the PFD, I'm an Alaska resident. However, those two things you don't have access to for a year.
You got to pay your dues with the winter first.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I anxiously waited for June of 24. And
nice.
Got to do a bunch of cool stuff. I would just tag along. So I've been sat on a bear bait with a buddy of mine, and he shot a really nice bear.
Right.
Done some cool fishing, like just did everything that we could without spending $1,200 on a moose tag or $500 on a black bear tag.
Right.
And just kind of bided our time slowly. And she got through her first winter here. She loves it. And she loves it. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to ask, because I've been to the Six Flags in Dallas in January.
Yeah.
And it was still 95 degrees outside.
Yes. Yeah. We have a really good community. For me, growing up here, having friends and all that from high school, like we have a really good community here.
That's huge.
It is 100%. And it was really important that we each kind of found winter hobbies, and mine transitioned disgustingly again into trapping and fur. But yeah, she absolutely loves it, and we're having a really good time.
Good.
So
good.
And now we're residents. So
yeah. The staying busy in the winter, that's where people goof up when they move here.
For sure.
Is they lock into either the drinking or the video games or something, and then it's just depressing after that. It's like I watched it happen in the barracks to people over and over. It almost happened to me. You know, like you just gotta stay active.
Yes.
100%. It's cold. Bundle up, but you can still get out and do stuff. There's not a lot of wind here.
No.
So when you bundle up, you're actually going to be able to stay warm.
Yep.
I went back home for a little bit in 2018, and it just mind boggled me how that wind, I forgot like how it just cuts through no matter what you're wearing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'll take an Alaskan winter over this anytime.
Yep.
And so, but no, yeah, the staying active, it doesn't even have to be an outdoor hobby. There's all kinds of stuff you can do.
Yep.
If you have a shop, you can tinker in your shop for all winter long and have projects that you're saving for when it's too cold to be outside, stuff like that. It's super important for your mental health, and especially to any of our listeners that are in the barracks and stuff like that. Like, find something to do, man.
Oh yeah,
don't just sit in there and dread going outside and dread going to the population and
drink yourself into a hole.
Yep. Yeah. I've watched it happen.
Oh yeah,
it's a bad deal. There are programs you can get out with. There are right there at the front of the gate. You can rent snow machines. You can rent different stuff. They have boats you can rent during the summertime. They've even got guided trips you can go on. So if you've never ridden a snow machine in your life, you can sign up with these guys to go out in like the White Mountains and ride snow machines with them for a whole day.
Super cool.
You meet up with them in the morning. They throw you in a van with a trailer behind it and some snow machines, and they'll drive you up there. It's super affordable because they're on base and they realize soldiers don't make good money at all, for the sacrifice that they're making. So, it's a good way to get out. Just stay active. That's the big thing.
100%.
So, yeah. So you got into trapping, huh?
Yeah. So that was like we just decided like, hey, we're gonna find a new winter hobby, and I didn't want to. I wanted to be really cognizant of not moving back to Fairbanks and just doing the only thing I did, and only talking to the people that I knew from Fairbanks, from the from growing up here, and only doing the same things I did when I grew up here. And so I was really looking to expand my circle, not because my friends that I had were bad friends, but just to meet more people and do more things and have more experiences. Because again, remember looking back, I had for years been like, man, you dummy, you didn't go sheep hunting when it was a harvest ticket. You didn't go sheep hunting or moose hunting when it was a harvest ticket. And, so I had a lot of regrets, if you will.
Sure. Yeah.
And, so really wanted to make sure that if we were going to move back up here, like we were going to do it whole hog.
Yeah.
And, so part of that for me was we have the opportunity every morning we wake up, I think for the full year, but I'm not 100% sure. Check the regs. We could wake up and be like, I want to go hunt wolves today. Like, how cool is that? Chris, you might be able to. Is it every year or every day of the year?
There are close seasons,
okay.
But yeah,
it doesn't matter. It's not that long to wait.
There you go.
You got the right attitude.
Yeah,
I'm on board. I'm with you here. Keep going.
we could just wake up on November 1st.
Well, like Black Bear's open year round.
Yeah.
Black Bear's.
Like, I mean, not that you would want to kill it. There's always something to do.
Yeah,
it's dude.
And when my two. Traditionally, back in the day, my two least favorite months were March and July because a lot of your predators are closed in March.
Yep.
Your trapping's ended, your predator hunting's kind of limited to mostly just like coyotes at that point. You're just kind of sitting there on the edge of your seat waiting for bear baiting season to kick off in April, where you can, and then you're watching the breakup season where it's, am I even going to be able to get in April, or am I going to be snowshoeing my stuff in to set up,
Yeah.
And then July, baiting's over, and then, bear hunting's spot and stalk style is not great in July. One, it's super brushy, and two, that's the time of year when they're not primed up in fur. They're not, as fat as they're going to be later in the year. You might as well wait.
Rubbed out.
Yeah, they're rubbed out. Wait until later in the fall. Let them fatten up a little bit, get their fur back and everything. And there wasn't really a whole lot to do. Well, when you broaden your horizons and now you're like, oh, well, there's salmon fishing and there's all of these different things to tackle. It's like, it really fills in the time. It's to the point now where there's so much to do every month of every year here in Alaska. I can't keep up. I'm constantly chasing my tail. We were talking about that.
I forget what there is to do sometimes. Like before I left for this work trip, I was like, man, I'm going to miss moose hunting.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss bird. My kind of bird hunting. That's 2 days long for me. And and I was like, dude, I can go grouse hunting. And I kind of I've lost the intrigue is not really there. But then I went out every morning at sun up on the whaler and had a cup of coffee and enjoyed it. And it was therapeutic. And I'm like, this is freaking awesome. I'm like, this is where you started. And I'm like, this is fun, man. And I'm like, I got to scout this stuff anyway, because now it's time to take my son out. And now I'm back and he wants to go out. And, it's like always something to do. If you miss one thing, the next thing's coming.
Well, and obviously there's a tier of a cool factor, right? Like obviously, like you got your Dall sheep hunts; those are like top tier cool factor, and then grouse are kind of more towards the bottom of that list there. But like, we live in a place where you don't have to just pick and choose to only chase the top tier cool. I mean, you can stay busy. I mean, like you said, technically speaking, you can go, hunt black bear every day of the year. There are some units where it does close for a period of months in the summertime, but not where we live. Grouse have their season, but it's pretty dang long. Like there's always something to do.
But I just wanted to, find a winter hobby and decided I'd marry, my love of getting outside and hunting with trapping. And so started attending the trappers meetings here in town. Shout out to those guys, pretty awesome crew and really welcoming. They have some really cool programs as well for some of the new folks who might be moving to Fairbanks or first winter here. Check out the Trappers Association. At the very least, you're going to meet like-minded people, even if trapping's not your gig. Something to do on a Tuesday night besides sit in the barracks, and you might meet some really cool folks. Anyway, really got into that, but with my work schedule that we just talked about, it's not conducive to marrying yourself to a trap line,
right?
And running it every weekend. I didn't have a snow machine, so I tried my hand at some fox trapping because there happened to be a lot of fox around the house, and just got my butt handed to me, and so that was pretty humbling, and got some traps unburied by a fox, so pretty humbling. But really, what I really, really like doing in terms of trapping is beaver trapping. That is fun. I love chasing beaver. You don't need. I thought about why do I like it so much? You're in sloughs and creeks and rivers, which is cool. It's fun. It's a fun place to be. Beautiful scenery. Like people pay a lot of money to come see the things that we get to see every day.
Oh yeah.
You don't need a lot of steel. You don't need a lot of traps to be effective at beaver trapping. You can catch beavers with 2 330s. I mean, the more you have, the better your odds are. But
you can snare them. and not even go the trap route.
Yeah, I suppose. I've never done that.
And the thing is, it's something you can build up on too.
Oh yeah.
So you start with 2 or 3 because that's, the $100 you had to spend.
Yep.
And then, okay, well, that was successful.
Yep.
Buy one more.
Yeah.
And like just build up to it.
If it's just a passion too, you can sell that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you sell your carcasses.
Yep.
Sell your caster, sell your pelts, and then buy more gear.
Have the passion fund
thing.
itself.
Yeah. You don't, maybe you're not making anything, but maybe it's, maybe that's your therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you're almost breaking even.
Let's not go that far. We don't want to.
You're always in the hole. You're always
Just
in the
kidding.
hole in this game.
My wife, I'm breaking even all the time.
We don't want to make Carson sad again.
Carson mad.
Carson mad.
And then the other walked into that one. If you attend the trappers meetings, a lot like you're looking for sign, and that requires a lot of woodsmanship. But if you're only up here for a couple of years, you're new. It's hard to be successful routinely at that. But anybody can find a beaver lodge.
Yeah, they're pretty obvious.
Pretty obvious, right?
Yeah.
So I really enjoy beaver trapping, and so really got into that and had a lot of fun doing that. Learned to skin beaver and flesh beaver has been fun. Learned and a good friend of mine that I met at the Trappers Association.
Yeah.
His name is Harrison. He's a great guy, and he's let me run his line with him before. And
nice.
Like the very first trap that I ever checked in the state of Alaska had a marten in it. And I lived here my whole life, and I've never seen a marten. Like, what is that? And he tells me about it, and I'm looking at it. I'm holding it. I'm like, this is the coolest thing in the world. And I if you didn't trap, you could very likely live your whole life in Fairbanks and never see a marten.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if this thing was the size of a grizzly bear, I would never go in the woods again.
Oh man, that would be terrifying.
The coolest thing, right?
Yeah.
And so from then on, I was like, okay, this is something I'll always do. I don't know. Again, just due to my job, I don't know how much time. I don't have the time to marry myself to a trap line and check it routinely, and that's
right.
Not fair. And so I've kind of pivoted to calling. Like that's going to be my thing. And so that's how I kind of really fell in love with your guys' podcast. Was there's not very much calling content, specifically lots for the lower 48,
right?
But here in Alaska, it's like bare bones, man. And so
yeah, whether it's videos or podcasts or anything, it's just not a very well talked about subject.
A lot of it's not very applicable to our environment either. This is what I've kind of come to the conclusion of.
Yeah,
because you never know what you're going to get. There's such a variety.
Yeah,
like down south, like you're going to get coyote or bobcat. Here, it's a laundry list.
Yeah.
You might call it barren. Depends on what time you're out playing, right? Like,
well, and the thing is, like, I mean, there's been several reports, even more in recent years, of like December or January grizzlies roaming around in the interior. Like there was a lady, I think it was 2 years ago. She was cross country skiing up in like Wickersham Dome area.
That's what I thought. Yep.
And she ran into a grizzly on the trail.
Yep.
And I'm like, and it was like, December, January time. It's like, you just never know, man.
No.
Like, you never know.
So yeah, that's kind of been like I said, bided my time for a year, and this year's I finally a resident, and just, my big goal was to go sheep hunting this year, and so I did do that, and I talked about all the reasons I'm not moose hunting right now, but the sheep hunt was better and worse in every regard that I could possibly think of. It was and I've done some pretty cool hunts, and really I really like to push myself a lot, and so I thought physically I had months to train and prepare, and I did, and I thought physically I'd be okay,
right?
Nope,
no.
I thought I'd have my gear super dialed, and I did, but I had total rain gear failure.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And that was. Did you get breathable?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think
I've heard a lot about that. It's I've always stuck with the Helly Hansons myself. And Grundens.
I had a Helly Hansen Improtec in my hand, and a set, and I was like, no, I'm going to go with this super ultra lightweight rain gear. Yeah. So I'm a sheep hunter, and I need to be all ultra lightweight. And there is some truth to that. However, if you can't Yeah, I had like 10 minutes in rain before I was totally wetted out.
Really?
It was bad. Yeah, it was really not good. And part of it was due to my own neglect, I would say. I didn't realize that you had to treat rain gear regularly. That was the issue, regularly being the key adjective there.
Especially if you're washing it or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
And so I must have just worn that DWR off, and I basically did not have rain gear for a very wet sheep hunt and a very wet
which August is always wet. I mean, that's our monsoon season effectively.
Yes.
Like, you know,
yeah.
And I have to remind myself that every year where it's, you know, we have this nice summertime into June, July where, you know, you might have some fires that, you know, goof stuff up with smoke. But other than that, it's nice. It's hot.
Yep.
Then August just seems like every year it almost feels like summer's over.
Yep.
Like it's just cold, it's wet, it's nasty. It's just you can expect it.
Oh,
you know, it's that's the time of year it is. And usually September gets nice again.
Yep.
You know, sun comes out more and whatnot. But yeah, every time I've gone out on an August hunt, I just expect it to downpour on me or be foggy or just be nasty.
Yep.
It's just it's the way August is in the interior.
Yeah. And probably statewide, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did a walk-in hunt, and it was 18 miles, which, you know, it's a good clip, but it's not. I mean, there's some dudes in the state that would chew 18 miles up in a day, probably.
Oh, I'm sure.
But for me, that was longest distance hunt that I'd ever done, and so that was pretty intimidating.
Yeah.
I'll tell you offline where we were, but the country was pretty dang intimidating. And it was brutal physically and you know, weather-wise and all that, but I learned a ton and just got hooked even more.
Yeah.
We didn't end up seeing a sheep, so I guess just kind of break it down. We expected to walk in. We're kind of the partner that I ended up with, and that sounded wrong. The guy that I went with. He had originally had other plans, and I had originally had other plans.
Okay.
And those plans, my original partner, fell through in like July timeframe, I think, and for legitimate reasons.
Last minute.
Yeah, fairly last minute. And it just so happened that his plans had kind of fallen through around the same time frame. And we grew up with each other. I've known him since I was 14, 15, something like that.
Sure.
And he'd be, you know, I'd be in Dallas or whatever, and he'd be sheep hunting and posting pictures. Dang it, you know, and just beating him up with questions. Anyway, so we got connected, and we both, you know, didn't have a partner. It was like, let's go. This range this drainage in this range, he has either killed or been a part of 2 different sheep out of this drainage. So
nice.
We were kind of one track minded, like we're getting into this drainage and we got to walk through a lot of country to get there.
Right.
But we're just going to break it off into chunks and just get it done. And we thought we'd get it done in 2 days ish. And again, it was about 18 miles
after arriving.
Yeah.
Or 2 days total with the travel.
Sorry.
Yeah.
We thought we'd get into the target drainage in 2 days. And it just, the first day it was 70 and humid. Like really humid where we were.
Muggy days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're literally just walking up in our t-shirts and our boxers, you know, up the trail.
Yep.
And then we get halfway up the trail and it starts sprinkling, but it's just enough of a sprinkle to like, I don't need a raincoat yet.
Yeah.
But you're getting soaked.
It's almost refreshing after the muggy, hot walk.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But like you're slowly just getting soaked to the bone. And then we kind of break up into the alpine. And we are soaked to the bone, and now you're out of the trees, so then that wind kicks up a little bit. And for anyone who's not been here, our rain is like, it's painful. It's cold rain. It's not a warm, like, oh, that's nice. It's not that at all. It's like,
no,
oh, that's like that came off a glacier.
Yeah.
And so you know, we'd stop to get water or whatever, and just shiver. Just like, okay, dude, I gotta go. Like, eat your Chex Mix. Let's go. And so we kind of just got to the point where we're both soaked to the bone, and we've got a storm rolling in from our right and a storm rolling in from our left.
Oof.
And we'd made it 8 miles. We planned to make it a little bit further. Like, nope, we're going to set up the tent right here. And we like barely got the tent set up, and it was just nuking on us.
Yeah.
And anyway, we had to get into this finger drainage, and then we were going to run this finger drainage down into this main drainage, and then cross that main drainage and go up and over into the next drainage. That was the plan, just to give some context. And like, okay, we'll get a decent start, and for the next day, on day 2, we'll get a decent start, and we'll click off these 12 miles now instead of these whatever it was. Mm-hmm. It was still just raining and storming outside till like 11, so we kind of got a late start.
Yeah.
And then we get down in this finger drainage that, again, it's not super far distance-wise. I think it was 4 or 5 miles to get all the way down this finger drainage. But it's a drainage in Alaska, and anytime there's water in Alaska,
there's brush.
Oh, gosh. And so we just beat brush for,
yeah,
I don't know. Like I said, we probably got down there at probably 12:30, 1 o'clock, and we beat brush till dark. And like you'd get so far down this way that you're like feeling committed, and then the brush is just closing in on you.
Yep.
And then you get to a point where you just physically cannot go anymore. So then you have to backtrack through that same brush and then try a new way. And we were just beating brush for hours, just hours.
And that's the problem with trying to put those time frames on yourself.
Yeah.
Is you can say, oh yeah, it's only 4 miles away, but 4 miles in Alaska, that's might be an all day trip.
Yes.
Like easily.
It might be 12 miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Between the zigzagging around everything and having,
We'd run a moose trail for like 20 yards and then just like, just have a sigh of relief, and then it just disappears on you and you're back to just anger. And
Carson, man.
Anyway, so we didn't make it as far. So we didn't make it as far as we wanted to on day 1. Didn't make it as far as we wanted to on day 2. So now we're into day 3. And originally I had planned for a 10-day hunt.
Mm-hmm.
There was a miscommunication between us, and I think we ended up with 7 or 8 days. I can't quite remember now.
Okay.
It shortened the time frame a little bit. So we're on day 3, and we're not even technically sheep hunting yet. Like, we're not into where we're sheep hunting yet.
Yeah. And now you're counting the clock on how long is it going to take you to get out of there, too.
Yeah, and exactly.
So it's working both directions against you.
Yes, we have to do this whole thing in reverse, remember that, with 100-pound packs, hopefully.
Exactly.
So we finally break into this drainage. I think it was the first day was 4,000 foot of elevation. It was a cranker of a hike.
Man.
And then this third day was, I think it was 2,000 up, 5 down, 5 up, 5 down, something like that. So it was just yeah. I've never climbed like that before.
Yeah.
It wasn't mentally prepared to climb like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't mentally prepared to be wet all the time.
Yeah.
Just a lot of like mental games that I wasn't prepared for, that you had just power through.
That's what knocks a lot of people out of the game.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can see it.
Yep.
So we get into this end of day 3, like it's probably mid-afternoon end of day 3. We're like in the drainage, and we get up there and it's like, oh, this is what I came here for. Like this just looks like nasty, gnarly sheep country. Like this is awesome. Super pumped. And it's, as we're kind of topping out, it's starting to just spit little rain, and it's like, oh, whatever. It's been raining for off and on for the last 3 days. It'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Then
it starts spitting snow, and then it starts like snowing, and and so we get our tent set up, and it went from snowing to hailing.
Yeah,
and you're just like, okay, this is just a mess, and you're totally socked in, and the forecast was changing in real life. It's changing by the minute, basically.
Right.
But so we're just socked in our tents, and it's just hailing and sleeting and raining, like all the ings on us right now, on top of this super exposed ridgeline.
Yeah.
And we're in a good tent. They make it in an aluminum and a carbon poled model.
Okay.
And we brought the carbon poles, again, trying to be real slick and be ultra lightweight.
Yep. Ounce counting.
Yep. And I think that was also a mistake.
Oh, really?
We're on this super exposed ridge that took us 3 days to get into. I don't have rain gear, and the tent that we have with us is not the tent that I would bring to like battle 50-mile-an-hour winds or what. I don't know what it was, but it felt like 50. I felt like we were getting blown off the mountain.
Yeah. And
it's snowing and sleeting and hailing and raining. And it was pretty. I was pretty spooked on it.
Yeah, and I mean, Alaska is the battleground for gear.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to test if your gear is good or not, Alaska's the place to test it.
Yeah. Yeah. And 100%. And I think that we weren't prepared for that. And my buddy, his name's Chris, he's been sheep hunting for 5 or 6 years. And he's like, that's the worst storm I've ever had. And so maybe I just got dealt like a real crap card. My very first sheep hunt was just like
trial by fire.
Yeah. But I'll never be I was like downright scared a few times there. You're like, you're just hanging on to every pole or trying to support every pole with your hands. You've got your trekking poles every which way. We've got, we built rock walls as high as we can before they tumble over on the tent.
Yep.
And the tent is still just like
every guy wire available to you is out. Like.
Yes. And I've never prayed so hard on a ridgeline before. But anyway, so we're laying there and I'm in reaching my wife and she's like, oh, it's supposed to clear up in like 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay, cool. An hour would go by and it's just getting worse. I'm like, what's it say now? And she's like, oh, it's going to be great. Like,
what weather app were you using?
So I was using a Zoleo. And and I was pulling the weather as well.
Yep.
And I was kind of seeing the same. I was seeing like rain, but not what we were in.
Yeah.
And again, we're, the closest city town that this was pulling from is not where we are, but that's probably where it's pulling from.
Right.
And she's probably doing the same thing back in Fairbanks. And it's like, oh, it's going to be 70. And I'm like peeking my head outside the tent and trying not to get my eye blown out by a piece of hail. Like just nasty. And so we laid there for, I can't remember if it was 22 or 30 hours, but we just laid there just in a little 2-man tent and just like getting our butts handed to us.
Yeah, it's probably all of 50 inches wide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we got a break in the weather and we talked. And it's like, all right, so now we're on day 4. And it's, again, I think we have 7 days. It's like, okay, dude, like we really can't effectively hunt this anymore. Like we had like a day or 2 to hunt this. We were going to have 3. Took us an extra day to get in here. Like we effectively can't hunt this anymore.
Yeah.
Unless a sheep walks up to our tent right now, like we're kind of out of the game. And that would be the craziest sheep on the face of the planet to do that and be out in that right now. But or walking around in that. So we both decided collectively, like, hey, if and when we get a break in the weather, because again, I don't have rain gear.
Yeah.
Effectively, like we're gonna bomb off this mountain and basically go back the way we came, but we're gonna take a shortcut, which often aren't. Because like I said, the way
another lesson learned in Alaska.
We had to come down this nasty chute to get down. It was directly south of us, and the storm was coming in from the north. The way we came in was from the west, like several miles, and then we kind of looped around. And so our quickest, most direct way off the mountain was south, down this chute. And so, like, okay, that's our plan. But it's like, what if it snows or sleets too much and we can't, right? So it was getting a little like, I'm not going to say an emergency or anywhere close to that, but you're playing mind games.
Right.
You're playing games in your head and you're making up these like worst case scenarios.
Yeah, what ifs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're just,
which it's good to keep in mind what can happen.
Yep.
That way you have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right?
Yep.
But it's not good to be obsessed with those.
Yes.
You know?
And when you're laying in a tent for 30 hours,
exactly, it's hard not to be.
You can get pretty creative. So we get a break in this weather, like maybe an hour, and we just bomb off this mountain down the chute, no problem. Now we're in another drainage, and we're going down it, and now we're back to now we need to go up this finger drainage that we originally came down. That we just beat alders for 8 hours, it felt like, and take a deep breath, like, all right, let's just start doing it. And our goal was to basically almost make it to where we made it on day 1, where we initially came up.
Sure.
We were going to try and push that way. And there were some other mountains that we could peek into from that area. And so we're beating brush again for 8-10 hours. And it finally just got to a point where we were both like, we're done. Like I'm done walking for today.
Yeah.
Like I'm not getting my butt blown off. Like I am stopping right now. Right here. I'm stopping. And so we tuck our tent in these alders, find a little hole.
So as long as there's a big enough place to put the tent up.
Yeah. Tuck our tent in these alders and we're just bushwhacked. And I put the final stake in the tent, and kind of standing up to stretch, and we're on one, it's a drainage, so kind of imagine a V for the people listening, and and we're on one side of the V, and
about halfway up, or
a quarter,
yeah,
okay. Quarter, fairly low still, because the moose trail that we ended up finding that we did not find on the way through initially, we found on the way back, thank goodness.
Did you map it on your eyes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Was low.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And so we were just off the trail enough where we weren't going to get stomped by a moose in the middle of the night, but not far. And so we put the final stake in the tent, and I go to stretch my back, and I look across the way, across the drainage, and I'm like, oh, there's a moose calf. That's pretty cool. And we'd seen a bunch of the world's safest moose are in there because you can't get to them with a wheeler.
Right.
And I'm not stupid enough to shoot one back there.
No.
And oh, that's pretty cool. Haven't seen any calves. We've just seen bulls.
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts milling around. It's like, that is not a moose calf. That is a grizzly bear. That is awesome. And so we're just watching it for a second. I'm like, oh, dude, we have tags. We can shoot. We are in the game still,
We're Alaskans. We can shoot
exactly. And my buddy and I's deal, again, he'd shot a sheep, and he was like, you get first right of refusal on any sheep, and all I want is first right of refusal on any brown bear, grizzly bear. It's like, that's first off an awesome dude.
Yeah.
And that was I took that deal quickly.
Best trade deal in the history of trade deals.
That's right. Yep. It's a great deal. It's the best deal.
It's a wonderful deal. Not everybody makes deals like this.
So we it was one of those things that was kind of getting dark on us, and we had 10 days whatever, our whole kit with us, food and all that.
Sure, yeah.
Just set the tent up. It's like, Chris, dump your bag right now. We're chasing this thing. And so we just both opened the end of our backpacks into the tent and just shook it out, just trying to get it as light as you could, and trying to grab okay, I need this. And so when I ranged this bear from the tent, it was 400 and I think it was 27 yards, I believe, 427.
Okay.
And it wasn't much to get across the drainage and chase it. And so let's get as close as we can. Neither of us had ever shot a bear.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get as close as we can and just see what we can do. And the wind was good. So we just, it's amazing how excited you'll get and how much less tired you are than you thought you were 15 minutes before when you see something cool like that.
A legal animal can just re-energize anybody.
Yeah.
And it all comes back when you're breaking it all down, packing it out.
Oh, man.
Tenfold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that adrenaline jump hits. And it's on to the races.
We're running across this drainage, weaving in and out of alders.
And from setting your tent up because you're too bushwhacked to keep going to running.
And I'm like, wow, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. It's like, that's weird. Anyway, so we ended up getting, I think, 220 yards from this bear.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking, getting set up and trying to find, it's just alders. It's just nasty in there. So we're trying to find the hole and this hole. And then, out the deal that we made is as soon as you shoot this thing, I'm going to shoot it as well.
Oh, sure.
I do not want to chase this wounded grizzly bear through Hell's Half Acre in the alders at night, or it's getting dark.
Yep.
And so he'd find a hole, but then I couldn't see, and then I'd find a hole, and then he couldn't see, and it was just chaos for it felt like eternity. But we ended up getting 200 yards from this bear, and we both found a hole, and it's all right, 3, 2, 1. He shoots, and it was facing. I could see its right. We could see its right, the right side of its body, and he plugs it, and he was shooting a 338, so he has no idea what happened, none.
Yeah,
and so it flips around. And bears don't bleed very much historically. And you've told me that. Anybody who's hunted bears will, from what I've heard, bears don't bleed very much.
Yeah.
This bear didn't get that memo, and when it flipped around, I was going to shoot it again, and there was just blood blowing.
Yeah.
He hit,
the geyser effect.
Oh, he hit this bear perfectly, perfectly, and so. Uneventful in that regard. And we give it a little while, and we get above it, find it, and it's super happy moment, and we're super jacked up and excited. And now we're standing over it. Like, all right, let's get to work. It's getting dark.
Yep.
Did you bring your headlamp?
Oh, no.
No. Did you bring yours?
Oh.
No. Okay. That's not good. Have you ever skinned a bear before? No. Have you? No. just a calamity of errors.
Time for some lower back pain and confusion.
Yeah, we're going to learn together today.
Yeah.
Gonna learn today.
Yeah. So, we discover that portion of everything. And,
Fish and Game has a really nice diagram that you can save as a PDF on your phone.
And we discussed that, and we discussed how neither of us had saved it. We thought the other
They
was gonna
also
save it.
offer a hard copy of that in the office. And for like the first few years I bear hunted, I kept one of those in everything.
Yeah.
Just because.
Well, and it's easy, like when you're first doing it. I mean, you could look at that diagram 1,000 times, but when you're sitting there looking at that
Totally
first bear,
different, yeah.
it's right out of your brain.
Yeah. It's like-
You're just excited.
It
and
can
you're
be
just,
overwhelming for sure. It's really intimidating.
Where was that line supposed to be? It's just on this side. Like, I think it was supposed to be behind the elbow. Or
Yep.
oh man. Anyways, so we hobnobbed our way, through that job, and we got it like 90% done, and just enough where we could get we got all the paws out, which was like
that's a feat. A lot of people
surprisingly easier than I thought it was going to be. Just find that little wrist joint. If you've shot deer before, you kind of kneecap them, sort of thing. It's the same idea.
Yep.
So we got the head out, the paws out, and all that skin out. Basically, it was we had it laying on its back, and so we just had to skin out the back. That was the only thing that was left. And it is like if we don't move now, it's going to be dark. And if you'll remember back, we tucked our tent into the alders, and I stood up as we put the final stake in the tent, and we see this bear. So we didn't have to. I always make it a habit of like marking my camp.
Yes.
Always on Onyx, except for that time.
Oh.
And so I'm like, dude, like it's gonna be fine. It's chilly out. Like, let's just leave this thing and like live to fight another day. Let's go eat dinner. Like, let's go drink some water. That would be good. But let's go find our tent that's buried somewhere in the alders in that general direction, and like just we'll figure it out in the morning, And so we did, and it ended up being uneventful. Like we'd both like seen a rock on that side of the face. It's like, okay, I just need to get to this rock, and then there's a rock here, and then I look left, that sort of thing,
Right.
And so we found the tent and had a good night's sleep, and went out there the next morning back to the kill site and finished skinning out that bear. And we're gonna poke around some of these other mountains and continue to sheep hunt, but now we've got a bear hide that we need to deal with. It's like, looks like we're going home. And so yeah, we loaded up and the other crappy thing, and like there's no way to split a bear hide.
Right.
It's just like you can split a sheep.
Yep.
You can't split a bear hide.
No.
So, trade gear, whatever. Help each other out as much as we can. But that poor guy, like, we ended up being 16 miles from the truck. We didn't realize that. But that tough son of a gun packed that bear hide for 16 miles.
That is a long way to pack a bear hide.
Yeah. And, it would be the last 8 miles was 4,000 feet down. And yeah, he's a tough guy.
Yeah.
Like, just a stud.
Sounds like it.
Tough.
Night.
When I knew I was going with him, I was a little intimidated. He's like 6'4". He's got hips that start at my the bottom of my rib cage. Like his like, I did a little experiment where I tried to keep up pace with him. So like every step he took, I would take and just go out. He was walking his pace, and he was unaware of my experiment, and I'm walking my pace. I'm like, how is he getting so far ahead of me this whole time? And first off, I'm like a 10.5. He's like a 14.5. So every step he takes, he's 3 inches farther than I am. And then his legs are 7 inches longer. So he's a stud.
Yeah.
But he got his appendix removed. He had like his appendix burst in I think early July, something like that.
Wait, of 24?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. I'm telling you, he's a stud. And so again, with this in mind, I'm like, yes, this is really cool to say. Like, yes, he's going to be slower. This is going to be awesome. This is the best thing that could have happened to me. No, dude just is a hard charger,
man.
So yeah, we ended up, it was really, really fun. It was like sheep hunting is more impressive in every way, shape or form than I originally expected. There's some dudes, there's a guy named Ben Reynolds in the state and, he is an absolute monster. And like, he's routinely killing by himself in late September, 40-inch rams and like packing them out solo. And like, he's done a couple podcasts where he'll give you some stats of his hunts. And it's like, it didn't even pale in comparison to that, but I still felt really accomplished. Like, hey, we set out what we came to do. We got into the drainage. We got dealt a crap hand of weather, but like we did it, and it just really lit a fire in me. And so every day I've got a little new mantra. It's like, every day I'm going to do something to make myself a better sheep hunter. One thing. So that's what I've been doing.
Well, and that's, when you dive into the world of sheep hunters and you start evaluating the kinds of people that they are that get really like, how did you put it earlier? Disgustingly obsessed.
Yes.
With sheep hunting. It's that challenge. It's because you have the potential of running into that situation where it takes you almost twice as long to get in somewhere as you thought it would. And you have to push through these things and it's a different challenge every year. That's the motivation for it. You're not getting a year's supply of meat off of a sheep.
Nope.
You're not getting, that's not a subsistence hunt. That is a challenge hunt.
You're hunting an experience.
Yeah. And that's the kinds of people that get obsessed with it. That's their sole focus.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome thing to see what human beings are capable of, man.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yeah.
But I'm already I tried to get out a couple more times this year. Just didn't work out. I was not confident enough to go by myself. And sheep hunting by yourself is a pretty daunting task. Like you're a long way from anything. There's a lot that can go wrong. You're covering some pretty gnarly country. But it really held me back a little bit this year. And so that's something I hope to get better at moving forward, is just having the confidence to just go do it.
Well, and with time and experience comes confidence. And there is how does Mike Condis has a saying, make sure your confidence and enthusiasm match your ability. Because there are people that get themselves in a lot of trouble with confidence and enthusiasm that's not earned in experience. And you end up being negligent in an area, or you don't foresee an issue that could be happening, like let's just say like your rain gear failure. In certain circumstances that can be a life-threatening
for sure
equipment failure. And for anybody, you'd pointed out how Alaskan rain is cold rain. You can catch hypothermia in August in Alaska
easily.
It's not like these areas of the lower 48 where August is your hottest season of the year.
No.
We're already cooling off. We're already getting into that.
It can snow in August.
And especially in the Alpine.
Yeah.
There's an area where I bear hunt, and it'll be, and this is later in the season, later in the fall, usually a post moose season bear hunt. And it'll be 50 degrees and maybe a little murky and whatnot at the bottom where we're camping down low. But you get up into that country where the grizz are hanging out, and I've had it go from muddy and like 50 degrees, a little rainy where we're camping, and you ride up to where you want to go hunt, where you saw that bear yesterday, and your wheeler's getting high centered on snow.
Yep.
You never know what's going to happen here. And even watching the weather, like you said, it's going to pull that weather data from wherever it can. It can't pull it from your exact location. I don't know. I used to use the NOAA app for weather, and it did phenomenal. It would show all kinds of different areas. But they started charging like $10 a week for it.
What?
Yeah, it's an insane amount of money.
You got in the wrong business, my friend.
Yeah, so I was like, nope, I'll just go with the inReach weather.
Yeah,
which has always worked out for us.
Well, at some point you just got to deal with it,
right?
Like it's going to be what it is, and like you're either going to be hunting or you're not.
Yeah,
and I'm going to choose to be hunting unless it's
and the weather can change drainage by drainage.
Oh,
100%.
Yeah, 100%. We experienced that. We got off the target drainage.
Mm-hmm.
We got out of there, and the forecast was matching what my wife was telling me the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, it's 65 and beautiful, or 65 and partly cloudy, but sun's going to come out at 2.
Yep.
Like it was matching that very well. But up in that drainage, it had in mind it would create its own weather.
Yeah,
100%.
Yep.
Like you could there's not a weather station you could have pulled that would have predicted that.
No. And it's just, that's, unfortunately that's where the big animals are.
Yep.
And that's why we go to those places.
Yep.
But it's, you got to be prepared for those.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
Well, let's take our second break real quick, and then we'll get into some of that preparedness.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
All right. Well, congratulations on having a good trip and coming home, with some hide and getting bloody out there at least. You can't say you came home empty-handed, so that's a good thing.
That's right.
But let's dive into, for this last segment here. You talked about being a gearhead earlier. Really getting nerdy into the gear and everything like that. Let's get into a little bit about like how you selected your gear for this hunt, and like maybe how your gear selections were different for Alaska versus like some of these lower 48 hunts you've done and whatnot, and what kind of resources you used to figure out what to bring with you.
Yep. How about I'll touch on the choices I made for this hunt, and then we'll circle back and I'll tell you what I learned.
I like that.
Does that sound okay?
I like that.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So it's a sheep hunt. So
Mhm.
and it was a walk-in sheep hunt. So
Yes.
like everything that I needed for the 7 days, whatever it was, needed to come with me. And
Right.
obviously everyone understands that, but that comes with consequences
Mhm.
and
Ounces become pounds.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I my goal was to be right at like 60 pounds with food, like full up,
Yeah.
rifle, spotter, food, everything I needed my goal was 60 pounds or
Mhm.
less. And I also, the synthetic versus down debate comes in
Yep.
as well. And I wanted to have the security of a synthetic bag.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to shave some weight. So I had a synthetic sleeping bag,
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of a bigger piece of gear. It's super important.
Yeah.
And, one of the bulkier, maybe not heavier, but a bulkier piece of gear. So we'll start there. And I'd previously used, like I said, I wanted the security of a synthetic sleeping bag. And I had previously used,
kind of break down why you like the security of a synthetic sleeping bag for the listeners.
Yeah. So down has a higher warmth to weight ratio, meaning that for the weight it'll be warmer generally, and it also depends on the fill power of the down. So not all down is created equal. You have 750 up to 950 generally. I've seen 1,000 plus fill down.
Nice.
But then you're talking like buku bucks,
Right.
and it's also going to be a touch more expensive than synthetic. It's going to last longer. A down product will last generally, if you don't beat the crap out of it,
Mm-hmm.
it'll generally last longer, and it will take more compressions than a synthetic sleeping bag. So like if anyone out there is storing a sleeping bag of any kind or any puffy gear of any kind, like compressed in a stuff sack, you should pause this and go take it out because you're just destroying it.
Yes.
But down products will generally last longer. So they'll take more stuffings and things like that.
Yeah.
And if and when you wash them, which you should, if you're going to be if it's a treated down and that's what you're looking for, it'll puff back up better once it dries. But down doesn't do as well in moisture generally. Now, lately, there's like I remember when my dad was sheep hunting in the early 2000s and late 90s. My uncle would come up and they'd go sheep hunting, and my uncle brought a down sleeping bag, and I think they were going to the Alaska range. And my dad like refused to take my uncle on this sheep hunt until he went to town, probably big race at the time, and bought himself a synthetic sleeping bag. Because how I understand it, I'm not the expert. They didn't have technologically, they didn't have the ability to put the coatings that they do now
I'm sure. Yeah.
on that down. So it was way more susceptible to clumping.
Yeah.
And basically all a puffy product is doing is trapping air. That's all it's doing. Air is a really good insulator as long as it's warm air.
Right.
If you have really cold air, it's really cold. But your body as the heat source is creating warm air. And so it's just trapping that warm air. So you need loft. It's trapping air, in the pockets of your jacket.
Exactly.
The space where your skin or your body isn't touching the jacket. It's trapping air in the fabric, in between the feathers. It's just trapping air. And if you compromise that, you just have a wet feather sack.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah. That's where you get those cold patches and stuff in old gear.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if it's compressed, if you're sitting on, so you're wearing puffy pants and you're sitting on that down, well, you're in a different way. You're compromising. You're losing the loft. Is what you're losing.
Exactly.
And so if you compromise the loft in any way, shape, or form, you're going to lose warmth.
Yeah.
But a synthetic will last or do better in wet conditions. So, if you're having a really wet sheep hunt where you're day in and day out, you're crawling into your bag and you're wet, or there's condensation from the tent and you're wet. Over time, even some of these treated products, in my opinion, they will lose some sort of loft. Now, it probably won't be as bad as it was maybe in the early 2000s or the late 90s.
Sure, it'll delay it maybe a little bit. Yeah.
Yep, but you're still going to be losing loft, and it'll be just kind of build up and build up and build up until you go to sleep and it's 42 degrees and you weren't freezing last night, but now you're freezing tonight.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have the security, like that was my shelter from the elements was the synthetic, my crap hits the fan. Like I wanted a synthetic,
which it did.
Bag. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And like I'd used another synthetic sleeping bag from another company that's very well known in this space, and I just did not like it. I'm a side sleeper generally, and B, I found the temperature ratings to be really off. And those temperature ratings, by the way, are just like survival ratings. They're not like comfort ratings.
That is. I know it's not malicious.
Yes.
But that when I first started looking for like backcountry sleeping systems, nobody points that out as like an obvious glaring thing that this is your survival rating.
Yes.
Like a 15-degree bag is not okay, I'm expecting it to be 15 degrees and I want to be warm and comfy.
Yeah.
Like, no, you need the 0-degree bag then or more.
Yeah. You might not be sleeping, but you're not going to die, we think.
Exactly.
Like that's basically what that is saying.
And even that's not warranted.
Exactly.
My standard bag is -30.
Yeah.
That's what I carry for everything.
That one I have currently,
and I just open it in the summertime. Like if it's hot, I just leave it open. But I always run that -30 bag.
Never gonna get surprised,
dude. In like spring bear hunting and stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, it gets so cold at night still. Like, I mean,
I've got that 5-degree one, that mummy bag, which it keeps me warm. Don't get me wrong. I've never had a problem with it keeping me warm. Sometimes it's too warm, actually. But it's mummy style.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way as you. I'm a side and stomach sleeper.
Yep.
And I can't stand mummy bags for that reason. It's too constricting. It's too, I don't know.
So I was going through this whole thing, and this synthetic bag that I'd used previously on other hunts, specifically, like I've been on 2 different mountain goat hunts. We glazed past one other, but I've been on another one.
Okay.
Used this synthetic bag, and I just didn't like it. Like, it was constricting. I didn't get the long version, and I'm right at 6'1", where like a regular bag will go to 6 foot or 6'1", but if your feet are at the end of that bag, like you're compressing that loft and your feet get cold.
Yeah.
So all that to say, and it was heavy and it was bulky, really bulky. All that to say, I was looking again, recognizing that we were at the bare minimum walking 36 miles, 18 in, 18 out. I was like, I want to reduce my pack weight as much as I want, as I can. And so looking around, and actually I believe it was Ben Reynolds, that guy I briefly mentioned earlier, was on a forum with him speaking back and forth, and he mentioned like, hey, you should look into a quilt. And I'd previously looked into a quilt, but I was just kind of maybe nervous about trying it,
Sure. Yeah.
And so I looked at, and it was an Enlightened Equipment. I think it was Enigma, Enigma, an Enlightened Equipment Enigma quilt. So it was a closed foot box.
Okay.
So it's sewn, and my feet get cold. That's historically, like, my feet always freeze. So I did not want any drafts or anything possible there. But then I like to turn and you'll sleep on my side, sleep on my back, sleep on my side, sleep on my stomach.
I'm that way too.
And so I looked on their website, and they're relatively, that's another difference between down and synthetic. Synthetic's going to be a touch cheaper.
Okay.
And it was relatively inexpensive. I want to say it was like sub $300 for this quilt. I could be wrong. I was surprised. I remember being surprised. I was like, you know what? It's early summer. Like, I'm going to go camping a lot this summer. I'm just going to buy this and test it out. And if I hate it, I have my other bag, and I'll sell this one off or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
And slept in it probably 10 nights before this sheep hunt. And we're talking like weekend camping trips, nothing crazy.
Right.
But I really liked it. Like, no comfort issues, did not have any drafting issues. Like, I was good.
I would say, what kind of system do they use as far as like keeping the drafting from happening? Because that's the biggest thing people talk about with quilts.
Yeah. So there's an elastic loop that goes around your sleeping pad.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
And it's got a little clips. So on the one side of your sleeping bag is a female end sewn, or I guess your quilt is a female end sewn onto the bag.
Okay.
And then it clips into that little elastic loop that goes around your pad, probably mid-thigh. We'll call it mid-thigh, maybe hip height, somewhere in there. And you can, the loops, the clips are sewn in, and the other side is a male clip and does the same thing. So it kind of sucks it under you a little bit, probably around your hip area. And then they have just an elastic piece with same clips, but it's not a loop. And you can put that around your back and suck it in. So as you toss and turn, it kind of stays to you.
Right.
I didn't use the second one that goes around your back. I only ever used the one that goes around your hips.
And then you just kind of hold it up over your shoulders like a blanket.
I kind of sleep where I grab and like cross my arms.
I'm the same way.
I don't know why. So it was never an issue.
Yeah.
And I ended up going with, again, talking with Ben and wanting to reduce weight. I ended up going with a 30-degree quilt. So survival, and we're talking August in Alaska, in the Alpine. You definitely can get snow. Like, it can get sub 30.
Oh, yeah.
In the Alpine, for sure. But however, I was confident that with all the other clothes that I was packing in, if it did drop to sub 30, I would be able to, I might not be super comfortable, but nothing about sheep hunting was, as I've discovered. So I was confident that I would be okay. I wasn't going to die or freeze or whatever.
Sure.
I might wake up cold once or twice, but
you can always throw your puffies on or your long johns or something.
Yep. So that was my sleeping bag. And for those who are listening, like, a quilt, that's insane. It's no different than a mummy bag, except for the fact that you're not entirely wrapped, and there's no hood. That's another change. But the biggest key difference that a lot of people, I think, get freaked out about is there's no back to a quilt. It's just in this case, it's imagine a blanket that you'd have on your couch, with a little foot box sewn in. That's basically a quilt.
Right.
But it's a sleeping bag. Same material and fill and all that. But when you're laying on your back or your side, you're compressing all of that insulation anyways.
Yes.
And so it's no longer working. And the only insulation that you have is your ground pad.
Yes.
And I think that probably matters way more. The R value of your ground pad, your sleeping pad, matters way more than people give it credit for.
It does.
And so I brought the Neo Air X Therm. That's what
I love that pad.
I use that thing everywhere.
Yeah.
And I've never been cold. I've not taken it to,
I think
sub 30 routinely.
Right.
I have, but not routinely.
I think that has the highest R value of almost any sleeping pad in its weight class.
I think it's pushing like dang near a winter pad.
Yeah.
I think so.
I mean, it's like in the 7s somewhere. It's like 7.2, 7.3, somewhere in there.
Yep. And I think a lot of people really overlook that and freeze, and that's not fun.
Yeah.
And everyone who's been there knows exactly what I'm talking about. But so yeah, I slept on an X-Therm large pad and happily carried the extra weight. No problem there. It was so it's wider and longer. And I'm again 6'1", so like most pads will cut off at 6 feet.
Yeah.
And then your feet are hanging over. There's no insulation from your feet, and so my feet get really cold. My hands and my feet get really cold. So that was the sleeping situation. I really like Stone Glacier. Like I just really like the company. I like the brand. I think they make really good hunting like YouTube videos, and I really like. That's all I watch is like if I'm watching television, quote unquote, it's going to be something like a sheep hunt on YouTube or how to trap beavers on YouTube. And
I think that's all of us.
Yeah. And so I really wanted to support those guys and gals over there. And I've kind of formed a relationship with one of the guys over there. His name's Ryan, and he's just awesome. And he's like the type of guy that you just like, it makes you want to buy from their company. And so I was using a lot of Stone Glacier stuff. So I was using their puffy top, their down puffy top and bottom, which I believe that's the Grumman. And again, you just heard me talking about down and all that and all this. Like my sleeping bag was my storm shelter. Like, I need to get warm. And that was synthetic. I felt confident enough that like if I got in a bad spot, wet wise, I could crawl into that sleeping bag, that synthetic sleeping bag, with that down stuff on and dry it out.
Yeah.
And there are some rewarming videos for anyone who's interested in what I'm talking about. Stone Glacier produced a rewarming video, and I believe it's on their YouTube, where they have a bunch of guys with blurred out faces, and you can take that for what that's worth. Jump into like I think the Yellowstone River in Bozeman in like January, like freezing cold, like worst case scenario, right? Like it's 10 degrees outside and you just jumped into a river that's like has ice chunks floating down it and you're soaked to the bone. And they have those folks, put on their puffy suit and get in their down puffy suit and then get in their down puffy sleeping bag, the Stone Glacier brand, and dry off and they did not. Over the the sample, it didn't appear that there was any like compromise in the loft or the warming ability of both the down suit that they're wearing and the down sleeping bag. Good. So that gave me some real confidence. Yeah, and it was pretty darn light. And again, it was another one of those, not emergency, not a piece of like survival gear, but if you ever got caught out, which happens a lot in sheep hunting, I was like, I wanted something where I could not freeze my butt off. Right. Might not sleep well, but I'm not going to die. Yeah. And, can have it in my bag. So that's why, and it was lighter, recognizing that I might be carrying it around more than my sleeping bag. I wanted to go down, and I'm going to explain, like I said, I'm real nerdy when it comes to this. I'm going to explain it the best I understand, the best I can. Down isn't super good at dealing with prolonged moisture exposure, but you can move moisture through the fabric, through the feathers. If you're warm enough and you're pumping heat into the system, you can push the moisture out. But once it gets to the face fabric, you need on the outside. So if you've ever woken up and your sleeping bag is wet, that's what I'm talking about. That's moisture coming through your body, pushing through your sleeping bag. That's what's happening. It's not raining on you. It might be, depending on how bad the condensation is, but primarily water vapor pushing through your system.
Right.
But once it gets to that face fabric, if you don't deal with it, it can just kind of sit in that down, and then you can start having some issues. But if you have another layer, over that down, such as a synthetic sleeping bag, synthetic quilt, it'll push it into that synthetic layer, which will again push it onto the face fabric, which will again pool up unless you have some sort of evaporation taking place. But synthetic can deal with moisture much better. Sorry, I'm nerding out. I can see.
No,
I can see.
I'm digging it, dude. No, I'm digging it.
No, I'm into it. I'm learning right now.
So you're not, by doing that, by having a synthetic layer over your down layer, even if you're a little bit wet or damp, or you are just flat out wet, you run less of a risk of compromising that down, and you push that moisture into the synthetic, which there's way less risk.
Sure. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my mindset. That's why I chose those 3 or 4 pieces, whatever.
Yeah. Well, and to Stone Glacier, just to follow up on what you said there. I mean, I've been running the Grumman for at least 2 years now. And I've had it in all kinds of situations, and oftentimes under a set of rubber rain gear or something like that, or depending on the time of year and where I'm at. I've never had a single problem with it.
Yeah.
Never had it clumping, never had it do anything. I've taken it on trips for work, going out to the places I go. And kind of to the point of their videos too, the similar video with the Chilkoot sleeping system that they have. I watched one where they actually submerged that in water.
Yes. Yeah.
And they did a weight test to see how much water it retained. And it was ounces.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't much. Like, and it was probably just water on the face fabric and stuff like that. It wasn't actually soaking into that down and doing it. So the treatment that they do, the way that they treat their down is very, very good.
Yes, but you have to keep up with it.
Yes.
And just like rain gear, which we'll get into here, you have to keep, like, any treated anything you have to keep up with. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And we'll just jump right into rain gear. So I brought breathable rain gear.
Yep.
And I brought really ultra lightweight stuff. It was 3-layer. But it was super light. I think both top and bottom was like 26 ounces.
Wow.
Like a pound and some change. Like super
that
light.
Is super light. For both?
Sub 2 pounds for both.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm 99% sure.
Yeah.
And I also used an app, or it's a website called Lighter Pack, where you got super nerdy with it. You say, this is my underwear, and it weighs this much, and this is my socks, and it weighs this much. And I listed everything.
No kidding.
Like from my toilet paper to my toothpaste, like everything. I got nerdy. And
all of the sheep obsessed hunters I've ever spoken to are that way.
Yeah.
So
and I got made fun of for it, but I don't care. So I brought this super light rain gear, and I'd had it for a couple years, and primarily used it in the lower 48, and it was totally fine. Didn't have any issues. Used it up here a couple times for not super heavy use. Tore a bunch of holes in it and patched them up because it is super lightweight. But was like, told myself it'll be fine. And so that I mentioned that first day we were walking in the rain, and eventually we were smart enough to put our raincoats on. We still were just walking in our boxers, but we had our raincoats on. And I noticed that if you've ever seen a jacket get really saturated, any jacket, fleece, doesn't matter, it changes colors a little bit. It kind of darkens, or depends on what color it is, but it changes colors.
Right.
And I noticed that the jacket was pretty darn saturated. Like the color was, it was a solid jacket, solid colored jacket. And so it was pretty dang clear. If you've ever been in the gym and you're wearing a bright gray t-shirt, like, you know what I'm talking about.
Right. Yeah.
And I was a little concerned, but this was day one. It's like, well, I'm not turning around. And I figured I was so wet inside that I was trying to push moisture through the jacket, but then it was also getting hit from the outside to such an extent that it just couldn't handle it. That's what I was telling myself. And found out the next day. I remember it's rained till about 11. Then we got out of the tent and started making our way. Well, it was raining on us the whole time, off and on, off and on, off and on. And I figured out that I had about 10 minutes before I was like actively had like cold water hitting me, my skin, man, 10 minutes. And like when it's raining for hours every day and you have ground to cover, like if you're just sitting in a moose camp or whatever, you could probably I would not be wearing breathables in moose camp, but you get my point, right? If you're hiding out in a tent, that's one thing, but if you have to cover ground in 10-minute chunks, that's pretty crappy. And so, I'd have to jump under a tarp, warm up, and we can push on. And like, it was just a mess.
Man, that's rough.
But it was too far committed at that point.
Yeah.
And so just really did not have rain gear. Excuse me. Really did not have like working rain gear the whole trip. And so I've come to the decision that you're going to be wet in Alaska. I don't care what type of hunt you're doing or trapping you're doing. You're going to be wet. But my rule now is I'll be wet or I'll be cold, but I'm not going to be wet cold. And so
I like that.
I'm not going to do both at the same time. I'll do one or the other happily. Not going to do both. And so I'm going to probably from here on out use rubber rain gear. And I'll probably I think Helly Hansen Nip Protect, Grundon's Neptune, Grundon's Tourney, which is even lighter but a little bit thinner, hard to get in town. And I'll probably wear a rubber top. And take it to somebody, and get pit zips sewn in.
Oh yeah, yep.
So that you can deal with the difference between a rubber rain set and a breathable rain set is that in theory, water can get pushed out of the breathable rain set to the outside air and then evaporate off the face fabric from there.
Yes.
In theory. But that only works. Yes. That only works if the garment is clean. If you've been busting brush or crawling in the mud or whatever, and all those tiny little pores, those microscopic pores, if those are clogged.
Especially up here with the silt and everything that we deal with.
Old pollen.
Yeah. Like if those little tiny microscopic pores are clogged, you're no longer getting that effect. And then you also have to maintain that face fabric with a DWR coating and things like that. And for me, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And additionally, every single piece of breathable rain gear on the face of the planet will fail.
Yeah.
It will fail at some point. It all depends on, will you reach that point? But it will.
And most people are so I guess you could say ADHD with their gear. They're going to replace it before it hits that point anyways.
Yeah. But if it fails at the wrong time, you can be.
But if you're going to buy one set and try to keep it for as long as you can, you're going to hit that point at some point.
Yeah. It's and every manufacturer will tell you it will fail. If you look at the breathability ratings, so there's two numbers. One is basically the pressure of water that it would take to push a droplet of water through the garment from the outside in, and then that's the waterproofness rating, and then there's a breathability rating, and I believe it's the same, where it's the amount of pressure it would take from the inside out through your body heat to push a droplet of water outside to the face fabric. So they all will fail eventually if you hit that pressure point, essentially. And so, I think I'm just going to run a rubber top and get some pit zips put in. It won't breathe as well as a breathable set, but with pit zips, it should be manageable. And again, I might be wet from sweat, but I won't be cold.
Yeah,
so I won't be breaking my rules.
At least not at that point.
And then I'll probably use a breathable set of bottoms because
Yeah.
If I'm covering ground in rain gear, I'm not going to be wearing pants. Like my rain gear is going to be my set of pants. I'll have my boxers or maybe my base layer on, but it's incredibly uncomfortable to wear multiple layers under a set of any rain gear. I don't care what it is. So yeah, and if my legs get a little wet, that's okay. As long as I protect my core.
Yeah.
You're not going to end up in too bad of a spot. So
sure.
That's probably what I'll do from here on out, unless I'm moose hunting, where I'm just going to be probably sitting in rain and for the whole time and being stationary. I'll probably just rubbers the whole way.
Yeah. And that's the only time I've ever had trouble with rubber rain gear of any sort is when I'm, beating the brush like you were talking about. You can end up poking pinholes in it or not even noticing that you've got a hole until you're getting wet on the inside already. But also hiking long distances. Yeah. Getting soaked with that internal body moisture.
Yep.
Because there is no breathability.
Yeah.
Something like pit zips being installed or even some chest vents, for like if you're hiking a hill and let's say, Alaska, when it's pouring, it's not necessarily a monsoon consistently. It can downpour for 5 to 10 minutes and then lighten up a little bit.
Very intermittent.
Yeah, you'll get some ebbs and flows and some ups and downs in the moisture, and so even if you don't want to have those vents open while it's really downpouring, open those up when it lightens up. You might get that brief 15-minute part where the sky's clear for a second, the fog disappears, and it's just not raining for whatever reason that instance.
Yep.
Let everything vent out. And typically what I've done, is without having those vents installed, is I'll just get to a place where maybe I'm not covered in, you're getting hit by the rain, whether that's under a tree or in some rocks that are protective from above. And then I can just unzip the face and just kind of, work it like wings. Yeah. Waft it out, get all that moisture out, and then zip it back up and right back in action.
Yeah.
And it's not the end of the world, right? It's a little bit inconvenient. You might not have to do that if you've got, $1,000 set of breathables that do hold up. But you're also not risking that fail point.
Yep.
If as long as you don't have holes in it, it's good.
Yep.
So, I've always run rubber rain gear for the most part.
You can patch rubber with duct tape too.
You can. Yeah.
And it's cheaper.
I mean, it works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I'm still up in the air because you are adding a pretty significant amount of weight. But the peace of mind is super important.
Yeah.
And you spend so much time and energy and money getting to these places, and the last thing that I want to do is be totally ineffective and just have to sit it out and sit in the tent because I can't go in the rain.
Right. Well, and I've even known people to bring redundant sets.
Yeah.
Where you have your one breathable set and then your backup rubber set just lives in the bottom of your pack where you never touch it unless your breathable stuff fails.
Yeah.
But at least that way, if it fails, you're still in the game.
Yep.
So, but again, that's extra weight. That's another set of gear that you've got to account for. But maybe you can skim somewhere else to afford those ounces.
Yep. So
you got to prioritize.
Exactly. And if you're going sheep hunting, it's almost surely going to rain. So just be aware of that. But yeah, I mean, if that would have been once in a lifetime, if that would have been that sheep hunt that I'd been saving up for 5, 6, 7 years, I would have been really severely disappointed. More disappointed than I was because I can always go back and I will. This isn't my once in a lifetime sheep hunt.
Right.
Thank God.
Right.
But yeah, had that been, my once in a lifetime sheep hunt, or, I'm a guy with kids and a wife and, working a job and, providing for my family. But hey, I'm stashing a little money here, stashing a little money there.
Yeah. Took you a decade plus to save for it.
Yeah. And then I'm spending a couple $1,000s on gear because I live in Iowa and, I don't have the gear for this. I would be pretty pissed off to have that bad of a failure. Again, part of it was my neglect, but it's like, why? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
it did not give me warm fuzzies. I'll tell you that. It did not give me warm fuzzies.
Did not make Carson happy.
No.
No.
So that was, and the other thing that I did, so the sleeping bag saved me a lot of weight. Going from a full up mummy bag to a quilt saved me a lot of weight. And wasn't crazy expensive to do so. I think I saved like 20 plus, 30 plus ounces.
Yeah.
So like
that's significant.
Yeah.
How did that 30 degree perform?
Yeah. Sorry. I phased over that a little bit.
Because I mean, you were in the thick of the situations, right?
Yeah.
Where everybody said, "Oh, rain gear failed. You're wet. You're cold."
Yep.
And you've got a 30 degree pack.
And it was sub 30 because it was snowing.
Yeah.
So it was totally fine. So in that situation, I had every single piece of clothes that I brought, and I was like sweating. I was too hot. I had to take some stuff off, but and for my other clothing, it's not super, super interesting. Just like base layer, mid layer, puffy, rain jacket. That was my upper body. My lower body was boxers, pant, puffy, rain pant. That's it. So, and not super technical or interesting there. But I supplemented with my puffy gear. I supplemented with my mid layer, my hoodie. I wore that hoodie every night I went to bed because, again, a quilt does not have a hood.
Right.
I don't wear like beanies or anything. I just never do. I'd way rather just put a hood on.
Right.
So yeah, I wore that little fleece hoodie to bed every night and just put the hood on if it got cold, and I was totally fine. No issues. I would highly recommend if you're a side sleeper, I would highly recommend looking at a quilt. If you're going specific, like this equipment that that piece of equipment was specifically for Dall sheep hunting in Alaska in August.
Yeah.
It's probably not something I would take to moose camp. But if that's your cup of tea and you're a guy in Iowa, we'll use that guy again. Go back to Joe. I would look into that because it performed really well for me, and I liked it a lot.
Because I'm a side and stomach sleeper, as we covered earlier too, and I've been interested in the quilt side of things for, I mean, I've probably been looking into it for the last 7 months. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet.
Yeah.
And a big reason is because there isn't a whole lot of like in person, like real life reviews of how quilts perform in the backcountry of Alaska.
Yep.
Right. Which I don't care how they perform in Kansas. I don't care how they perform in Ohio.
Yep.
Right. Like I care when they perform where I'm going to be using it.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's because their popularity is kind of more recent, or maybe enough people haven't taken that leap of faith to actually try them in the field, which, and to your point, I mean, buying it so far ahead of time where you had the time to sleep in it beforehand, you knew you could replace it if you didn't, or use your other sleeping bag if you didn't like it, if it didn't keep you warm. Is a huge thing, and you should always test every piece of gear you plan to use for survival,
especially your rain gear.
Especially your rain gear.
Just take it on a low risk trip and put it through the trials.
Yep.
But and there's so many different styles of quilts too. Is the other thing, and so maybe not all are created equally. Maybe some do have a lot of draft. I've seen some where the foot box is simply you just cinch down a cord.
Yep.
And there's still this like little hole that might have a little flap over it, and that's not what you want, when you're back there.
Yeah.
But from the sounds of it, this one,
it worked. I was really
great.
impressed.
Yeah.
And I will say with quilts, you need to get the biggest, the widest and the longest quilt. I did that. I spoke to people, did a lot of research. Through hikers, if anyone's familiar with through hiking, are huge. They love quilts because they save a lot of weight. And so I did some thorough research, and the consensus was you need a wide quilt so you can tuck it under you. Right. And a long quilt so it's over your face, whatever, up to your neck. You don't just buy, if you're a normal average size human, you don't buy the average size quilt. Buy the long wide or the extra tall. You would probably need an extra tall wide.
That's the problem I have with most gear.
Yeah.
It's not about what's the best for the job. It's about who makes one that fits me.
I was going to ask you, so like on your sleep pad, is that an extra wide pad that you run too? Because that's what I run for everything.
Yeah.
But I'm obviously not sheep hunting.
Yeah. It was I think they just call it their large, and it's larger, it's longer and wider. So in some other companies, like you can do a regular wide or a regular or a short or a short long or whatever.
You had the whole tossing and turning thing. I've woke up like off my sleep pad morning, and it drives me nuts.
100 times.
Yeah. You have the rectangular one, right? Not the tapered one.
I have the tapered one.
Oh, you do have the tapered one?
Slightly tapered one, and
that's the one I have. But I've been wanting to go to the rectangular one.
Yep, I have the tapered one, and for my purposes here, it was the right choice.
Was it?
I lost a little weight here and there over a rectangular. Most backpacking tents taper.
They do.
Foot.
Yeah.
So I had that to consider as well. And so it was the right choice.
So even with the quilt, there was plenty of room.
No
it wasn't.
Problem. Yeah.
Nice.
No problem for me.
Nice.
No issues.
Because that's the one I brought out moose hunting last year. And it's the size of this rain can.
I noticed it was pretty thick too.
Yeah. No, it inflates to.
What is it again?
Pretty good. It's the, I always screw up the name, but it's the Neotherm.
NeoAir X-Therm.
Yeah. NeoAir X-Therm.
The X-Therm is like their cold use model. The
Okay.
NeoAir is the company.
Yeah.
X-Therm is the.
I always mix those words back. I'm like the Neotherm X-Air or something like that. So
Yeah.
I have a really hard time advertising
As long as
for
you
these
get
guys.
it all in there,
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Google will do the rest.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not into sports, man. I can remember names.
I run everything I do is weight's really not a factor. So it's like the big thermarest,
Yeah, you got the big thermarest.
Dude,
I
it's
like
still
that
pretty
thing.
light though.
It's not bad. Yeah,
That's
what I'm getting one of those for work because they're tougher.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sleeping on an air pad. 100 nights a year.
And sleep is so important.
Yeah.
Like when you and I were in the military, like sleep, they did not put such a precedence on sleep that they do now.
Yeah.
I have buddies that are in still and seen a bunch of studies coming out where they're studying soldiers and looking at their endurance, their load carrying capacity, just all these physical factors and seeing how they perform, and they're sleep depriving them and they just suck.
Yeah.
They might have been super soldier one day.
Mhm.
You sleep deprive them for long enough. And by the way, it takes like a day, like one bad night's sleep, and you can screw yourself.
Well, and that's what I was surprised to learn. My wife was telling me about this. We were just talking about how our wives are, real into like this.
much smarter than us.
Much smarter than us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And better looking.
Thank God for them.
And better looking.
And better looking. Yes.
Definitely in my case.
But she was cluing me into the fact that like similar to what you said, one bad night of sleep, it'll take you multiple nights to make it's not an hour for hour thing. Like, I got shorted 4 hours tonight, so I'm just going to sleep an extra 4 hours tomorrow night. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Like it takes multiple nights of multiple good rests to get back to square zero where you can build on from there.
Yep.
Which kind of falls back to why I don't like mummy bags.
Yep.
When I'm constricted like that and I can't roll over and move, and like same thing with you, in a mummy bag, I roll off that sleeping pad all the time. Like
I've
I'll
never
wake
been
up.
able to sleep in one of those mummy bags. I've never understood it.
Yeah, I can't do it. And then you wake up and you're out there on a 2-week moose hunt,
Mhm.
and that's what you brought with you, or, a 10-day deer hunt, or, in your case, a 10-day sheep hunt.
Yep.
It's like, if you're not sleeping good by day 6, you're done.
Yeah.
Like
You're half
toast.
the man you used
Big
to
time.
be. Literally.
Yeah.
You're half as capable as
Yeah.
you were.
And especially when you get into situations where you need that mental fortitude
Mhm.
and you get stuck in your tent for days on end and you're
Oh yeah.
running through those scenarios. A tired brain is not a strong brain.
That's
Right? Like
yeah.
you can lose that mental fortitude. Doesn't matter how tough you were going into it.
Yep.
You got to stay on your game.
Yeah. You got to be able to talk yourself off the figurative ledge sometimes.
Yes.
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 And if you're not on your A game mentally because you're sleep deprived, you're going to be much more likely to call it, fold it in, and head back to the pickup because you're just beat. And you're going to go home and sleep and have a good night's rest or two and be like,
Yep.
should still be out there.
And that's
And we've all been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
100%.
And that's where regrets come from.
Yep.
Yep. But the cool thing is, even when you're on one of these trips and things go absolutely haywire, like they apparently did on you guys' trip,
Mhm.
With a little bit of gear failure and a little bit harder terrain to get through. One thing I love about hunting is it's always a learning experience. Whether you're successful or unsuccessful, you always walk away with gold nuggets of knowledge, experience on ground. You're not just sitting there on your couch watching YouTube. You're figuring it out for yourself.
Yep.
And that's why year after year, even if you don't have all the best gear, getting out there and doing it is the best way to learn.
100%. We've talked about this.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. If it was easy, everyone in YouTube land would be doing it. It's you just got to put the time and effort in.
I was beating Chris up with questions about predator hunting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just beat me up with it. Just my favorite thing to talk about,
and
just putting me through it. Huh?
Just really suffering over there.
And I came to the conclusion, I said this, I was like, I'm figuring out that you just need to, whoever, whatever it is and whoever it is, you just need to do it. Because I can talk with Chris all day and say, what squeak did you use at what volume and at this location? And I can go back there the very next day, and we've talked about this as well.
Yeah.
And do that exact same sequence, and it may or might not work. It probably won't.
Yeah.
So you just need to go do it and figure it out for yourself, and you're going to have, good luck and you're going to have bad luck, but you're going to have no luck if you're on the couch.
Or I tell you I didn't do well, and then you make a judgment based off my experience, and you're like, well, if Chris didn't do good and he does this all the time, there's no point in me going out there. And you go, I don't care if he did bad. I've got tomorrow off and I'm going. And then you call me up and you go, hey, dude, I cleaned house. I'm like, wait, what?
Thanks for that pin you dropped.
The weather changes or something happens and that it doesn't.
Yeah.
And the more you hang out with Chris, the more you realize that when he says it wasn't good, it means it's going to be great. Like, he's like, dude, this trip sucked. I only got one pickup full of fur. I don't understand. I don't understand where I went wrong. I've only tagged out on bears this year. I don't understand. I've learned to love when you say things aren't going according to plan.
Well, like sometimes that's just relaying what others gave me. I'm just like, directly relaying that. It's not necessarily my own input.
I know.
Like when you were coming down to meet me to go dip net, I was like, everyone says it sucks, and then it was like 50-minute limit. Like,
yeah, he's literally texting me. He's like, yeah, we runs over. Yep, people aren't catching fish. He's like, I'm gonna go recon it. I'll let you know what I find. Literally 50 minutes later, another inReach message. Limited out, heading back in the truck. Like,
yes.
Yeah, but like that's the whole thing too. Is like we went out in the dark.
Yep.
And I didn't take I never take to heart what people tell me.
Yeah. No, you can't. Well, and the other thing too, and this kind of falls into like where I've noticed people get in the mind trap is like you had brought up, you love watching hunting films, and all of us do, right? It's what we're passionate about. It's like a baseball player watching a baseball game, right? Like, or a soccer player watching a soccer game. That's what you do, and you're watching somebody else do it, and you can kind of live that through them, and see, oh yeah, I do that too, or oh, I hadn't thought about that, But a lot of those films cut out the mistakes. They cut out the harder, the odd stuff that you're going to deal with when you're out there. And people get into this mindset where it's like, well, I don't know how to do what they do. Or I'm making all these mistakes and they're, I'm watching this. It looks easy. It's like, same thing with the car projects on YouTube, right? Oh, the 20-minute fix. It takes you 6 hours, right? But like everybody makes mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Everybody, no matter who it is, it doesn't matter how popular they are, they've made those mistakes, right? Like you might not see it. It might not make its way into a film. It might not make its way into the public, but they've made their mistakes.
It's like anything. If you're doing it enough, you're getting your butt kicked.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as...
And if you go out there and you just try and you come home and you just got the crap whooped out of you and you just are tired and beat and, down on yourself, just dig through for the lessons. Dig through for what gold nuggets can you pick out of this situation?
Yep.
What did I do wrong? How did I end up in that situation? How do I get out of that next time? How do I not walk into that next time?
100%. And use another sports analogy. If they were going to pay you $1 million to shoot a free throw, you'd probably shoot a whole lot of free throws before that $1 million shot.
Right.
And, the point I'm making is the more reps you get at anything, the better you're going to be. And so if you're, in my case, going out all winter and calling and don't see a single piece of fur, like, hey, I'm just getting reps. And we spoke, and it's like I was making a lot of mistakes. I think that's where a mentor can come in and maybe fine tune a little bit. But I mean, he could probably drop a pin and say, I've killed a wolf here. You should go here.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not on my game or up to his game, like I'm probably not going to kill a wolf there, and I need to fine tune some things.
And just because I say it, and that's my strong point. Predator calling is my passion above all things, but it doesn't make it so. It's going to be different for every day, every guy. I love, if just for entertainment, and most people won't get this, I'll just get on Facebook and read these predator hunting, these Alaska outdoor, and I just love it. These guys are like, yeah, you got to sit this long. And dude, I think I've told you this story. My wife, like, I'm going to go call. I'm going to go on a hike. I'm going to go call. She's like, dinner's ready in 40 minutes. I don't care what you do. You're sitting down with us for dinner. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Dude, I've gone out and like let one bleed out and had a cat stand up out of some brush. Well, that's not 60 minutes. That's not, you can't time that. Mm-hmm. And then if I run around on the internet and I go, oh yeah, it takes, like, if they're there, they just pop out, and everyone's gonna be like, oh okay.
Yeah, we don't see anything in 5 minutes.
This guy's got a picture of a dead cat. He must know what he's talking about. It's like, it's just always different. You just got to go. It's trial and error.
Yep.
I got other buddies that hit me up. They're like, how'd you call in? You've been out, what, 10 times now? I'm like, yep. What, do you see anything? Nope.
Mm-hmm.
You really? I'm like, yeah. It's not seeing anything. Haven't seen anything. I got a buddy that he doesn't go that much. He just shot something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's another thing with a lot of the, like, especially in Alaska, is it's a numbers game. It's 100% a numbers game. It's the amount of time you put in, will compound into results. It's like, like if you only have 3 days to go moose hunt out of a 15-day season, you can't expect to be in that 20% of the successful moose hunters in the state, right? It's not a high success rate.
You might luck out.
Yeah, and you might luck out. Like you were saying, roaming around with your bow and, in your truck and stuff. People do kill moose that way. People kill them off the roadside all the time, right? It happens. Moose live everywhere. But that's not what you should do to secure your success if you're really committed to being successful, right? You can't just be like, well, I'm going to drive around, No, that's when you need to take the PTO. That's when you need to get out farther. That's when you need to dedicate the time to learning to call and doing all this
other
stuff.
Carl says, break it down. Like, him and I know people that they don't devote lots of time, but they have a very keen ability to locate rich moose territory.
Well,
or a corridor. I mean,
which comes from
experience.
Time built up to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
now their season might be cut in half because they don't have to do what a guy like me has to do.
Right.
I need to devote 2 work weeks to get skunked.
But that's where putting that time in gets you, right? Like, and it's the same thing where, like, I might go out all year calling, same as you go out all year calling, but your years of experience have compounded into, which drainages likely have fox. You know how to see sign driving by that I might just drive right past, right? Things like that. Things your eyes are going to key in on. And that's another thing that doesn't get translated into, like, social media and films and stuff like that is, you might see a video of some guy, bagging a caribou. Let's just say that. It doesn't say it's his 4th trip out there, and got skunked on the first 3. Like, it doesn't say that. It's just, there's an Instagram post of a caribou or a YouTube video of a caribou. Yeah. Like, so
the video is 12 minutes.
Yeah. So when you go out there and you get skunked, don't feel bad. Like, that happens to people. Like,
doesn't show that he caught a night in town in a bed and put all his stuff in a dryer.
Right. But yeah, use those things, those films as inspiration, right? But, like, don't use those as a baseline for what your experience is going to be. And that's just the point I'm trying to make there.
Like, something else, when I really started getting into calling and stuff, I remember, like, it's almost like just becoming fanatical about your research, and then you're just consuming more time on X, watching stuff. Like, I remember one day, like, I cracked a beer. It was like early afternoon Sunday, and I was watching, like, a Les Johnson video on calling coyotes. And I'm like, dude, I'm drinking a beer. It's like 2 p.m. The weather's perfect. I've watched enough of this. I should be out there doing this.
Right.
Like, yeah. And that's like getting into the winter blues and, like, and you think you're winning and you're doing that kind of stuff, and you're not hunting. You're not doing what you should be doing. And, like, okay, I'm just gonna get motivated and get out there. Like,
yeah.
Yep. This guy's killing coyotes in Dakota. It's not going to be the same thing here.
Yeah.
It's time to go get schooled.
Yeah. Go make your own mistakes and learn your own lessons. So,
yeah.
Which, let's wrap this back all the way around to where you and I were talking when we first started this segment, covered your gear, and then the mistakes made and what you would change next time. You touched on what you would do different for rain gear next time. What other kind of gear lessons did you learn?
The other thing that the other take home that I really had gear wise was tent. Tent. And actually on the way over here, prior to me jumping in the car, there was someone by Homer or Seward, I can't remember exactly where, they were goat hunting and they did not bring the proper tent. And they had to hit the SOS button at like 4 a.m.
Was this recent?
Yeah.
I just read about this when I was out of town. Yeah.
I saw it today, but I don't know when it was. Because they didn't bring the right tent and they got their butts handed to them in a storm. And now I'm not saying you need to go buy, $1,000 Hilleberg. And, maybe you have your MSR Hubba Hubba, and you just need to be a little bit more cognizant of where you put that Hubba Hubba.
Right.
And I think that's probably, you can try and pack for every unknown, but then you're going to be carrying 100 pounds of pack.
Exactly.
I think you just need to be
prior to filling it with meat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think you just need to know what you're capable of, what you specifically are capable of,
right?
What you can endure both physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing with your gear, and come to peace with that, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you can afford afford a Hilleberg, great. Like, probably not going to go wrong.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't. I'm in the mindset now, or I guess I'm in the research phase now of like, what tent would I trust in high winds, varying angles of where, they're coming in, winds are coming in from different places.
Right.
It's not, hey, the wind is out of the north. It might be for 5 minutes and then it might not be. And then guess what? And so I'm really on the dive of like, what tent do I want to trust? And it might be, for instance, an MSR Hubba Hubba, but then I need to know, like, okay, guess who's not going to be on an exposed ridgeline when a nasty storm's coming in again?
Right.
This guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop back down to the bottoms and live to fight another day, and I'll climb up the next day, sort of thing.
Yep.
And then physically, I was fine going up, like up the hills. That was virtually no problem. And after you get, a couple days in there, like you get up to speed pretty quick.
Your conditioning kicks in.
Yeah, your legs kick in. But coming down hills, I felt like I had no brakes, and it almost cost me, like injury wise. That same chute that I was describing earlier, there was waterfalls up and down this whole chute, and there's one specific place where it was cliffed out, like it was a cliff of a waterfall, and you just had to come down the side and skirt around the waterfall and kind of run the sidewall. And my like,
that's intense.
It was. It required a lot of concentration, and my legs just gave out. Like I just could not take that step that I took.
Yeah.
And I tumbled, like head over heels, tumbled straight down, and it's steep, and just happened to catch myself. So
a lot of people have been airlifted out after something like that.
Yeah, no, I got lucky, man. I got really lucky. And so I'm talking about, doing one thing a day to be a better sheep hunter. For me, I really like working out and like lifting weights. I really enjoy that. Probably doesn't look like it right now, but I swear I do.
Concealed carry,
right? Yeah, it's what the jean shirt's for.
Yeah, exactly. That might just be grabbing a 20-pound dumbbell and doing, finding a 12-inch block and stepping down in a controlled manner, just over, for reps, and just doing it that way. So
yeah. Well, a lot of people don't think about that. I found that out once my knees started giving me trouble.
Yeah,
was that the downhills actually hurt worse than going uphill?
Way worse.
Like, and it blew my mind.
Yep.
And like with trekking poles. Like I never started using trekking poles until like downhill started kicking my butt. Like uphill, I can zoom.
Yeah,
but downhill, no. Like exactly what you're saying. It's just your leg muscles for some reason just start giving out.
I just had no brakes.
Yeah,
it was my knees specifically, like the little tendons and all the little muscles around your knee. I just had no brakes, and that's the only way I can describe it. I just could not hit the brakes.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
where
that
it's where you're almost like numb. You just have no control over your legs.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're flopping them around and hoping they land on a decent spot.
And then you got your buddy
Right.
that's outpacing you that you're trying to keep up with, and
Yep.
you miss something, and you're it's
Mhm.
bad news.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, those. What else? I brought a pair of gloves, like a pair of like almost like leather work gloves.
Mm-hmm.
I probably wouldn't bring leather again, but I almost didn't bring those, and that was really they proved to be really, really invaluable for just busting brush. A,
Yeah.
and then B, you're scrambling up, shale. Like that stuff is not friendly to your hands.
No,
those
it's not.
gloves are trashed now after
Mhm.
one hunt. I've had them for a couple years, but they thoroughly got thrashed, and that would have been my hands.
Yeah.
So that was something key that someone coming up here listening to this in Iowa, Joe from
Mhm.
Iowa, might not think about. It's like a good pair of not work gloves, but
Hardy gloves.
hardy gloves that
Yeah.
can
You
withstand
You know those
some
like
abuse.
cut gloves
Yes.
that have insulation in them?
Yep.
So I used a set of those when I was on my work trip.
Mhm.
And because I don't have those kind of construction hands. These dudes are building and wing and lumber. I was a little out of my element there with those guys. But so I'm like, I'm going to wear some good gloves here. But those cut gloves are like great for a lot of, I use them for like bear season and stuff. Get a roll of bear over or your whatever.
Yeah.
Working the boat or getting into stuff. You've got that. Well, if you're tired and you're skinning something,
Mhm.
you're not going to cut yourself, and it
Mhm.
gives you, it's just an extra barrier. Like,
And you've got that dexterity there too. With
and
those.
they're kind of
Right.
warm, and you might sweat into them a little bit. You can roll them out, and you can actually dry them out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But they work pretty well.
Yeah.
Or non-insulated, depending on how cold it was. It sounds like it got pretty cold there for a minute for you guys too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Good. I had blisters again. Like day one, had blisters.
Yeah.
Footwear for me is like I need to figure that out.
Have you played around with different insoles?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have, and I put a very expensive amount of Leuco tape on my feet. Like I just can't figure it out, and it's incredibly frustrating. But I guess just having that would be something like, your mindset is you can push through anything,
Mhm.
anything. And when we were dog tired, we set the tent, and then all of a sudden we're running after a grizzly.
Right.
And 10 minutes before, I told Chris my knees didn't work anymore, and I was done.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, I can, that in itself proves that you can push through anything,
Right.
but you need to have the mindset to do that.
Yeah.
And that means, in my opinion, doing hard things regularly.
Yes.
And putting yourself in situations that maybe are a little bit above your pay grade right this second, and a little bit, not stupidly,
right.
not recklessly.
Yeah. Not risking life and limb, but
yeah,
uncomfortable.
pushing yourself a
Yeah.
little bit every time.
Yeah.
That would working on your mindset for sure, and just knowing
Mhm.
like this is probably going to suck way worse than I think it is. But,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna enjoy it.
Yeah. Have a little bit of David Goggins, downloaded on your
exactly.
phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You start getting worn down. You just throw the earbuds in, listen to him.
Yep.
Call you weak.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Who's going to carry the sheep and the bears?
Not you.
Not you.
Not you. Yeah. But yeah, no, overall, it's maybe I'm making it sound this crazy, insane thing that's impossible. And it did feel like that a couple times, but overall, like, just do it.
Yeah.
Just don't get in over your head. Just go try it and just go do it. You need the reps. That's where I'm at. I've still never even seen a sheep outside of the park. Like, just go do it and you'll figure it out. And that could be said for hunting predators in the winter and calling them, or trapping, or moose hunting. Like, just go do it. Go try it, and you'll figure out what works for you.
Exactly.
That's probably where I would end it.
Yeah.
And if you're a guy coming up here for the first time, like, read your butt off.
Yeah.
Practice with your gear. Read, research, whatever. Talk to your guide and your outfitter. Practice with your gear as much as you can. Practice with your gun as much as you can. Make sure you have I would spend way more money on that and make sure it's reliable.
Oh yes.
And just
I've learned that hanging out with you.
Yeah.
talk. Yeah. and just make sure that like your mindset is where you think it needs to be, and know that you're probably going to exceed that, but you're going to have a good time. Like it's not impossible. You can do it, and you just need to go for it.
Right. And I think that what you just said about where you think you're going to need to be and it's going to be exceeded is for everything.
Yep.
Whether that's your physical fitness, whether that's your, how tough your gear needs to be, how tough you need to be, like
cold tolerance, wet tolerance,
cold tolerance,
food tolerance, what your caloric intake looks like versus your partner's.
Right.
I mean, you come in various forms.
Yeah.
That adversity.
Yep. You can prepare as much as you possibly can, but just understand there's going to be an aspect of having to be flexible on these things.
100%. That was a good way to put it.
Yeah. And that's part of the adventure. Yeah. That's part of the fun.
There's your plan, there's Alaska's plan for you. So
exactly.
You're not going to win that battle.
How would you say your pack weight did? You said you had a 60-pound benchmark. Was that like?
Yeah, I was right at 62. Okay. So I was a little bit over. I would still like to lose a little bit of weight on my body, which I
you don't look like you have much to lose.
Dude, we're out shooting. He's all ripped. He's like, yeah, I'm trying to lose some weight for sheep hunting. And I'm like, what? Like, dude, I need to go do whatever you're doing. Like, if this is bad, this is
right.
I want in.
Sitting over here with my Dunlap.
Yeah, dude, we're out there shooting. He's like, I gotta lose some MLBs. I'm going sheep hunting. And I'm like, I was just gonna ask you what you were doing to get like this.
Oh boy, that would be the cheapest place to lose weight, to like drop weight for your pack, like your overall pack, like drop some pounds for sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, I lost you guys. Cut me off, not cut me off, but you got me off sidetracked, and I totally do not remember what we were talking about now.
Well, so I've talked to some other people about their bench weight, or what they like for their pack weight to be, and some people are like no more than 50 pounds. If it's more than 50 pounds, I'm not hauling it in.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, when you start breaking things down, and like you said, you're looking at your socks. How much do your socks weigh? How much does this t-shirt weigh? How much, is this extra tent pole or these tent stakes each individually? It's hard to stay under 50 pounds, man.
Oh yeah.
Like that is not an easy benchmark to hit.
You're spending a lot of money to hit that weight for sure. But the most important thing, and I think the reason that's unrealistic for most people, is the people that are regularly hitting that 50-pound weight with food and gun and optics.
Mm-hmm.
Like those people have experience.
Yes.
And if they get into a crappy situation, they have the experience to get themselves out.
Yeah.
But I'll speak for me. I have no business getting cute. And I learned that getting cute right now. Maybe I will in 5 years. But today, as we sit and speak today, I have no business doing that. And you will not see me out there with a 50-pound pack unless I'm going for a 3-day sheep hunt. That would be great.
Sure.
I would love a 50-pound pack, but
right.
I don't have that level of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And
and a lot of it too is learning what you need and what you don't.
Exactly.
Maybe you've got this 1-pound piece of gear that's been in your pack for 3 years and you've never pulled it out, and you're just like, well, I guess I'm not bringing that this year.
Yep.
But that takes that time, that time in the field.
Yeah. What did I touch this trip? What did I not?
Yep.
I think that goes for everything. I don't have experience in the sheep department, but I've done that with a lot of my stuff. I'm like, I don't ever touch this.
Mm-hmm.
This can stay.
Yep.
We don't touch this 5 gallons of fuel ever.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to need it. We can float back down. We're leaving it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, in the way you get experience is just with reps, right? Like that's the only way you're going to do it. And then you just have to go for it. Like you just have to go for it. There's no other way to replace that. You can watch all the YouTube videos you want. You can DM Chris 1,000,000 times on Instagram asking about predator hunting. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
You just have to get that experience.
Yeah.
But I thought 60 pounds was reasonable, and I've backpack hunted a bunch of different times, and like have found that maybe there were some things that I didn't need to bring. But I think 50 pounds for most people is a little unreasonable, and I wouldn't.
Right.
And I know you were just using that as an example, and I'm harping on it.
And the person that was telling me that, or the people that have told me that, are well experienced.
Yeah.
They're 20-year veterans of the sheep world.
Yeah.
And so they're not, they're not bringing anything they don't need.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, would highly recommend. Good time.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
See, that's the mindset to have. Get your butt kicked and still have a good time.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to tame anything out there. Like,
no.
The whole thing you mentioned, like, I know what I can get by with. And what instantly popped in my head when you said that was like, the entire thing just felt like getting by. Like, I'm just going to get over that hill. Like, oh, thank God. The whole thing was just doing what you could with the terrain, with the weather, with your experience level, with your physicality, and just doing what you can and not quitting.
I've broken it down even more than that. Like on certain, like I'm just gonna get to that boulder. I just got to get to that boulder. I'll see how I feel when I get to that boulder.
Oh yeah.
And you get there and you're like, yep, I still got some in the tank. All right, yep, that next boulder, that's the, and you just, next thing you know, you're at the top. But
I do that all the time because my lungs and my body don't add up. And, I got the inhaler on me all the time, and I'm like, okay, if I can get to that bush, and then sometimes I'm not. I got a bunch of miles left in the legs, but the lungs are and I'm like, okay, I've hit this inhaler freaking 5 times. I've got one more time till I'm maxed out on this thing, and the lungs aren't doing what the body wants to go do.
Yeah,
I'm envious of the sheep hunting thing because I'm like, man, that's
right.
I want to go do that so bad, but I'm like, I could probably work my way up to it.
Oh yeah,
with some serious lifestyle change, like around the calendar too. Not be like, oh hey, it's getting that time again. Like,
right.
I got an old buddy that he sheep hunted a lot, and he was like, you basically turn everything to sheep hunting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's like, your whole year is sheep hunting.
Yep.
He's like, you eat good, you sleep on time. I'm like, oh. He's like, you basically do what you're supposed to do if you're not a sheep hunter.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't eat junk. I'm like, oh man.
Yo,
I'm out.
Right. No. Well, and that's where off air, we were talking earlier about, the different eating, different diets and things like that, and different, things you put into your body and whatnot. And it's all important, figuring out what your body utilizes, what hurts it, when you talk about, a lot of people, especially on the standard American diet, they're eating stuff that's very inflammatory to their system. They're a lot of the times, if you have habitual, like chronic knee pain, chronic pain of any kind, really, a lot of it can be fixed by diet. There's so much of it that doesn't require going to a doctor and paying thousands of dollars for synthetic drugs and shots and things like that. Like, a lot of it, and I'm a prime example. When I eat right, my knee pain goes away completely. And it's just taking care of yourself, taking care of your body. And, there are certain hunts you can do where you're not required to be in tip-top physical shape. You can roll around and shoot a moose off a 4-wheeler and ride it right up to it, or your side-by-side, throw it in the back of your side-by-side and roll out, and if that's what you do and that fills your hunting, shtick, then by all means, sure, go do that. But like for some things like a sheep hunt or mountain goat or, even any of these kind of remote excursions, if you got to be in tip top shape, like don't skimp on that stuff. Like all year long, like try to make yourself feel good. That's, it's hard, especially when you work a job where you're traveling or you're on the road or you're, just working a ton of hours, it's when I was a cable guy back in the day, you're working 12-hour days. You're on the road all the time. You don't have, a microwave in your van. Like it's hard not to hit that McDonald's drive-through and the gas station taquitos and all that stuff. Like, but it adds up over time. Like stay on top of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you'll be better off for it in the long run.
Yeah,
like whether you get a sheep or not, whether you go sheep hunting or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, off for it.
It's being in shape. I'm learning is useful for anything you do.
It is.
It doesn't matter even if you are going to go ride that 4-wheeler up to that moose, that's still going to take it out of you. And if I mean, if you're in bad shape, that's going to whoop you too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, we wrestling that thing all day.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're bent over at the waist, skinning that thing out, getting all those quarters taken off and hoisting stuff up. And I mean, you take a whole moose carcass, broken into pieces, of course, and piece by piece, throw it into the back of a side by side. That's still not an easy venture. Like that's a lot of deadlifting. Different.
Yeah, and if you don't deadlift all the time,
your lower back's gonna feel it. Trust me. I've done some moose where you can drive the side by side up to it. I've had other ones where it's multiple mile pack outs. And it's just they each have their own challenges. Oh, yeah. So just whatever you're going to be chasing, just make sure you're ready for it. 100%. Nobody wants to get out there and end up with a physical issue just because of being unprepared. So that's what I'll leave off that one. I'll get off my high horse, off my pedestal. Can't call it a high horse because I'm not in the best of shape either. But I'm trying. I'm a human. I'm trying. But so, anything else gear related you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Nope. I think that's it. I think I probably talked too much. So,
so it doesn't sound like the footwear element went real well. But did your buddy have some footwear that he was stoked on that? In that department, or do you care to?
Yeah, no, he wore. I think he wore Kenetrex, and I've worn Kenetrex. I've tried Crispies. I've tried Schnees. I've tried Solos. I've tried Hanwags. Tried Zamberlins. I think that's the list, and I just cannot find the only boots that really fit me well, or like I can use all day, are really flexible boots, and that doesn't really. Historically, doesn't really jive. Traditionally, I should say, it doesn't really jive well with sheep hunting. But I'm to the point where I think I might just use a more flexible boot, and build my body up to that capability, as opposed to trying to, put a square peg in a round hole sort of thing.
Right.
Because I've done, elk hunts in Colorado and things like that with more flexible boots, and not had any issues, and not had feet pain or anything like that.
I know Crispy makes some pretty flexible ones. They've got a couple models that are down there in the flexibility range.
And then there's Steve, I can't remember the guy's last name, the guy that kind of owns Exo mountain hunting, hunting. I think he did a sheep hunt recently within the last 5 years, and like glorified tennis shoes, and didn't have any issues. So
I think it's the Laponias. Is that it with Crispy?
Yeah, I think
those are their flexible ones. I'm pretty sure.
And so that's probably what I'll do moving forward is stop trying to cram my foot into and clearly my feet just do not like super stiff boots. And that's what everyone will tell you need for sheep hunting. But if I can't walk, I can't sheep hunt.
Doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think I'll probably go that route and just spend the next year like really building up to that.
Yeah.
I've kind of found myself in the same place with footwear.
Really?
Yeah. Like, Crispies, they feel great. Working them, go hunting them. The feet are just dying in them.
Yeah.
And they're a good boot. Like,
yeah.
If I didn't hunt them, they're the perfect footwear for work. But once you start getting into some of that activity, it's like,
when I really struggle, this is going to get a little, I should say this, woo woo. But I don't really know if our feet were supposed to be crammed in, traditional shoes.
No,
I don't like.
They're not.
Whether it be the shape.
Yeah.
I think there's some merit to, like a more foot-shaped shoe. So like really, like when your foot hits that ground, it spreads out. Just like when I put my hand against this table, it spreads out. And I think your foot is built to do that, and it's probably like the most efficient way to go about things.
Yeah.
And we as a society have spent the last hundreds of years cramming our feet into little, shoe-shaped, not foot-shaped, shoe-shaped, shoes. And I for me, I think that has something to do with it. And I think humans have been hunting for, don't think they've been hunting for millions of years.
Sure, yeah.
And it's not like they didn't have to carry heavy things on their back with them. And so I think you can, I mean, I know you can build yourself up, all those little muscles in your feet and your ankles and your knees and your toes and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
To be able to withstand that. But I think it just takes time recognizing that we've been in casts for, 30 plus years at our,
The first dude that ever mentored me, like bear hunting, I wanted to go do some spot and stock stuff with him. And he would archery hunt like on logging roads and trails and stuff. And he would hammer bears regularly. And I don't think I've ever met anyone since him. And there again, people be like, listen to this, be like, people do that all the time. I don't know, a lot of guys that just are like, yeah, I'm going to go get a bear tonight with no bait, with no. This dude wore Vans. Well, and so it sounds nuts. When I bear bait now, I'm in Vans high tops most of the time.
That sounds extraordinarily comfortable.
Till I can't handle it. And usually what I'll do, because you're carrying light gear, I'll have my extra tufts, and usually my insulated extra tufts with like smart wool or type of sock like that or whatever as the season progresses, and that's not a factor. And then I'll slip into those when I start putting my warm layers on. But most of the time now, I'm in high top Vans. And I actually took a set of high top Vans, snow sealed them, and I will cruise through water and stuff with those, and I'm dry. And it sounds absolutely nuts because
awesome.
That's not cool. That's not cool guy stuff.
That is the coolest guy stuff.
Well, and I remember I showed up to hunt with this dude, and I had extra tufts on, and he's like, "What are you doing about that?"
The OG
guy
guy
that like mentored me.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was awesome. And he's like, "What are you doing with the extra tufts?" And I was like, "Oh well, it's raining out and stuff." And he's like, "Well, yeah, but we're not going through like puddles. You get to pick where you walk, and you can't feel anything in those, and you're going to be loud and clumsy, and that's going to kill my chances, and this and that." And
really,
and so I was like, "Well, what do I do?" And he also like worked out a lot, and he was like, "Well, think about when you deadlift and stuff." And I was like, "Well, I don't deadlift. I'm not that kind of cool guy either." But he's like, I work out in like chucks
what I do
and Vans.
Yep.
And
exactly
same thing, listening to you talk about like the whole being flat footed and having that relaxed. And then he's like, yeah, and I can feel stuff.
Yeah.
You can't feel stuff in hunting boots.
Yep.
He's like, there's no set of hunting. And granted, now this is almost 20 years ago and things have come a long way.
Sure. Yeah.
But still, name a boot that you can feel the terrain under your feet, or one that you're going to operate in that's comfortable like day in, day out. There's no such thing.
Yep.
And I know there's guys that will argue me on this. But I love, and think about how lightweight that is. And even getting a lightweight set of Crispies.
Yeah.
They're light, they're comfortable, they're packable. High top Vans are half the weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Easily.
And yep.
Well, and to your point, what you were talking about earlier, your woo woo comment, which I've heard that before. I love that you used that to describe it. But so my wife is, again, much smarter and better looking than me. And part of that is she got a double major in college, and it was archaeology and anthropology.
Oh yeah.
And so she does, she's worked in different archaeological digs, and she's like handled like old bodies, old bones, and and she's really studied like human development over the course of like the modernization. And it's exactly what you're saying is, the human foot was designed to be flexible on you put a super stiff boot on and you go to walk up a steep hill, your heel is hanging off in thin air. You're walking on the front of your feet because that boot doesn't have that flex. And even if you tried to put your whole foot on the ground, if it's too steep, you're really going to be pushing the tongue of that boot into the top of your ankle / your calf or shin area, and we're not designed to be that way. If you're hiking up something flat, your feet are designed to be flat, or hiking up something steep, your feet are designed to be flat, to be flexible up that way. And they're actually, I'm going to not get too technical because I'll butcher it if I do, because I'm just the dumb guy that likes to go run around in the woods and kill stuff, right? Like, she's the college educated one. We'll have her on at some point. You guys can all meet her. But there is literally studies done on the muscles in the leg that have gone away or are much smaller now because of the footwear that we use. And it's not that you can't get that back, but there's, like, I wear Ariats most days, right? Very tough leather boots, being from Kansas, and that's just like what I'm comfortable wearing and whatnot. So, but that's actually ultimately really bad for your leg muscle development. And it can even develop into knee pain and hip pain and lower back pain, because it's those support muscles that would normally support, everything builds on top of itself, right? So your support muscles for your ankles, support the knees, support the hips, support the back. Everything. It's
all system. It's not, they're not independent, right?
Exactly.
They all work together.
Yeah. Everything has to be one flowing system. And so when you don't develop those muscles in your legs, then you can develop problems in other places. And a lot of people these days don't put pieces together and figure out, if I just stop wearing the Ariat boots,
it's like
maybe
not fixing parts in your car. It's not just going to be that part eventually. That's going to be
right.
It's a good analogy.
You're going to have something else going on where you're, time to get a new car.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, using more flexible footwear, it's not only, it'll take you some time, but like once you get your body used to that, it'll actually be a stronger system overall because of the way the human body is designed to work. So.
And not to say you can hunt in sheep hunt in Vans. That's not what I'm implying, but
I mean, I'm sure somebody can.
And I'm actually would not be shocked at. I mean, you got to think some of these dudes are so hardcore. I was like, I hunt I sheep hunt in Vans. Stupid kid. But no, I mean, dude, and it's nice to walk in like that, and
I mean, you walk in like Vans or Chucks, like that's all I wear.
You wouldn't even think about it because you just think you have to be so kitted out and geared up to do some of these things you do. You're like, okay, I got out of the truck and I walked a mile. Do I have to do this in a pair of $600 boots?
Right.
Did I get in? Sometimes the ground doesn't permit that. Sometimes I've actually worn those high tops with my gaiters on. I mean, you're getting goofy, but I mean, if you think about it, it's still serving its purpose.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're lightweight. You're not wearing yourself down. You're
quiet.
And some guys like to make noise when they walk into baits and stuff. I'm always quiet. I don't do the alert thing. I don't want to sit down and wait. Whatever. I don't want to wait 5 minutes. I don't want to wait an hour for that to cool off. I want to walk in on something eating. That's what I'm there for.
Yeah.
Then that's just personal preference, but you're there to hunt.
Yep.
If I had a bow or something, maybe a little different opinion, but
it's not a bear scare bait.
I'm carrying a howitzer. I'm hoping something's standing there.
Let's see what this 4570 could do.
Yeah. Hopefully it does what I think it's going to do. Because now I'm not on that podcast. This is a little different in real life. No. Yeah, I have a lot of issues like that with footwear, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
This way I just can never find that like heel. I would get like heel lift. I'll do different stuff with insoles, different brands, and I don't know. I've never been able to figure that out.
But I've never had a blister in a flexible like I said, Chucks. I wear Chucks a lot.
Yeah.
Never had a blister in Chucks ever. Now I'm not saying I would hunt in those like sheep. I do think there's some merit, like if you're stalking, like, I mean, there are, your wife's an archaeologist. I bet she's seen some really cool moccasins and mucklucks and things of that nature. It's like, those guys were the professionals, the experts. They did it every day. There was no closed season.
Exactly.
They didn't do that. They didn't eat, and they knew what they were doing, and they were all flat-soled, flexible.
Yep.
It really can take you down quite the rabbit hole. There wasn't like Sitka gear and scent blocker and scent mitigation, and I'm sure some of these dudes are pretty ripe.
I think about that all the time. Like,
but you could also think animals evolve with us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah,
you know,
no, I just think back, like whenever I'm complaining about anything in the woods, like you and I were talking earlier about that Wolfman book, like Frank Glasser, like what he did with the gear he had available to him, like falling into rivers and surviving on the other side, and like climbing the mountains he climbed for weeks of his life, just back to back, like when he was trailing the 40-mile herd.
Walked a dog to death.
Like, yeah, literally.
Walked a dog to death.
Literally walked a dog to death. Like,
dude, I just watched The Revenant.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, all right, I need to step it up a little.
But that's just like, I mean, there was none of this synthetic insulation gear back then. There was none of this like ultralight this or that. I mean, they just made do with what they had, and they got her done. Like, that's just gave her heck, you know? And like, I don't know. It makes me stop complaining when I really feel like complaining sometimes. And also kind of proves the point, like, you don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars if you're entry level.
No.
Get some entry level gear, make sure it'll keep you alive. But like, I mean, we've done entire shows on like entry level gear and affordable stuff, and like how to look for sales and how to like buy things piecemeal throughout the year to get the kit that you need. And that could be another thing with these guys that have 50-pound packs. You know, maybe they started with a 65-pound pack, and over the years just replaced this with a smaller version, or took this, you know, replaced this and bought a new that, and then now it's down to that,
for sure,
that weight, you know. But like, man, like it feels like there's some gatekeeping almost with people gatekeep themselves, you know, thinking, oh, I don't have a full set of KUIU. I can't afford KUIU gear. I can't cheap hunt. It's like, oh no, like I know people that can afford KUIU gear that still don't, and they go kill sheep every year. Like, it's just what you want to use.
It's like I get a few more miles on me now, so, and like I buy better equipment, but there almost used to be like this real big like letdown when like people would be like, oh yeah, so when you're calling, what do you got? You got like you got a Sitka jacket, and like people were like kind of outfitting me in their mind, and I'm like, no, I went down to the Army surplus store, and like it was almost like offensive to people. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
they do.
Running like the cheapest rifle you could buy at Sportsman's with the crappiest ammo, and you could just see the disappointment. Like, oh man, we were almost friends, but you just didn't quite check all the boxes.
You're just not cool guy enough for me.
I was gonna have you over for a barbecue, but you wear fleece. You're not wearing.
Dude, those fleece tops are the bomb too. I love those.
I've gotten into like a lot of the lightweight stuff now though too. Like, so last year I finally broke and I got into some down stuff and synthetics. And dude, I wore so much less.
Yeah,
so much more comfortable.
Yeah,
scent mitigation, which is you might luck out sometimes, but that's a huge factor when you're calling. It's huge. And
well, and one thing I will give the expensive gear, I do have to give them this, is yes, you'll be less bulky and less, you'll be more warm, less bulky. There's a lot of benefits to having this stuff. One of them for me is the flexibility.
Yeah, just your maneuverability.
Like when you're using a regular old hoodie with regular old, you know, long johns and regular coat and another coat on top of that, and like, you know, and you're Carhartted up and flanneled up, like you go to lift your arm all the way, like there's a lot of material there that's not going to be allowing you to have full mobility.
You know what else too is like you shoot your rifle that's fitted to you.
Yes.
Now you pack like this giant parka on, and
and your LOP just jumped to 15.5
military issue fleece, one of those black fleece, and you're like, and now your length of pull is like out in orbit. And you're like, what, dude? What? Like, okay, none of this adds up anymore. If this, you know,
you're not even on your cheek rest anymore.
Well, and think about like rolling one of those parkas up and throwing it in your pack, and then rolling a fleece up, as opposed to like rolling up a synthetic and like a puffy jacket, and stuffing it at the bottom, or throwing it in a pocket because it breaks down that small.
No, nobody's saying there's no benefit to it. I mean, and like I said, like for me, the mobility is a big one because they have the extra material where they need it. And especially when you buy same brand for all your pieces, they're designed to layer. Mm-hmm. So like your large outer layer is sized to fit over your large base layer, right? And kind of fit together like a kit because it's designed for what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so when you go to lift your arm, it has that flex, it has that material needed, so you have full mobility. That's a huge thing I noticed going from Carhartts and other stuff to real like hunting gear, like Stone Glacier and First Light and Sitka, Kuiu, all those, you know,
they're benefits.
Yeah. You're buying a piece of gear that is engineered for what you're doing. But don't let it stop you if you can't afford that.
It's doable.
Yeah. Like maybe that's a long-term goal is to own all that stuff.
I think there's way more moose that die in the state of Alaska to a guy in blue jeans and a hoodie than probably anything else.
Yeah. Yep.
You know what's funny is a lot of my success has been with like not expected in like street clothing or like job site clothing, and I'm like, I don't even get a chance to throw all that new stuff on and smoke this thing.
Yep. You just change before you take the pictures with it. That's it.
Let me get all this on. So my wife isn't
why
mad.
Is his jacket so clean?
Is that Photoshop?
Yeah. Final question for you. Was there anything you didn't bring that you wish you had? Like completely something you didn't have any version of?
Yeah, this is going to be one that a lot of people won't. Yeah, so another thing that I did, and to save quite a bit of weight, was I went with I had a Stone Glacier. It was a 6900 bag, and it's their like Cordura fabric, like just your normal kind of gray Stone Glacier bag. They're awesome. I have too many of them. I won't say the number, but I had to buy another one and have bought their Terminus. I think it was 7800, and it's like that. It's black. It's that slick waterproof fabric. I think I saved like 4 pounds. Like the Stone Glacier bag, like a Stone Glacier is a really light bag to begin with.
Wow.
Kurt designed it like with an ultralight hunter, like sheep hunting in mind. And I think that guy used a 3,300 cubic inch bag, which is just absolutely nuts when he was sheep hunting up here. But when you come to like a 7,000 cubic inch bag in their Cordura fabric and the 7,000 cubic inch in that new, I should know the fabric, but I don't. Significantly lighter. Significantly lighter. It's also waterproof. The fabric itself is waterproof. The seams where they sew it, there's no way to seam tape that and have it be durable. So the seams aren't waterproof, but the fabric is.
Yeah.
So I got real cute again and seam taped or seam sealed all of those seams. So I stuffed a bunch of blankets and sleeping bags and crap in there to blow out those seams a little bit. And I'm not the first guy to do this, by the way. And seam sealed with just your run of the mill Gear Aid seam sealer, whatever it's called.
Yep.
And seam sealed that bag. And then I had all my really important stuff, my sleeping bag, stuff like that, puffies, in dry bags. And so I did not bring a pack cover. A pack cover.
Gotcha. Yep.
And it was no issue 99% of the time. The 1% where I would probably bring it, and I think it's multi-use, and I'll explain that. My partner, Chris, who's been sheep hunting 5-6 years now, every night it's, you're in a little 2-man tent and you have a vestibule that's like the corner of this table to work with,
Right.
And so I'm trying to stuff my bag, my rifle, and then it's like, oh crap, I want to make food now. I have to dig through that bag, and it was just a pain in the butt. He would put that pack cover on his backpack and then just push it out of the vestibule. So it was, and then he would push like the straps under it a little bit. They would get a little wet.
Sure.
But by and large, his pack was totally outside of the vestibule with a pack cover on it.
Right.
And we did this in the military with our ponchos a lot with our rucks, and I didn't even think of doing it. And he was able to be so much more organized at night. And I was really jealous of that because mine was just chaos. My vestibule was just pure chaos.
Yeah.
Additionally, if you were up high and you needed to we thankfully didn't have this issue because we had rain all the time. But say you were running low on water and you didn't want to drop all the way down to the bottom, you could use that pack cover. And if it was going to rain that night for a little while, you could dig out a hole in the tundra and put a rock down there and kind of make yourself a bowl with your pack cover, and there's your water. Like, you don't have to drop all the way, 1,000, 2,000 feet down.
Right.
You could also crawl up, and maybe not crawl, but you could, pull it around you if you got in a real bad spot. So it'd be a really good multi-use piece of gear for 5 ounces or whatever it is. So that's something that I did not bring, and I purposely didn't. I had one, decided not to. That I think I probably will in the future, if even for just the ability to push my pack outside of the vestibule at night. That was super. I was really jealous.
Yeah,
really jealous of
that. That is, especially when you have 2 men in a 2-man tent. That's not a lot of space. So
no space at all.
Yeah.
So that would be. I know we're getting long in the tooth here, or maybe just me, but yeah, that was a really kind of a unique piece of gear that I purposely left behind that I wish I didn't. Everything else, I made do with. I brought too much food. It was probably, I think people probably run into bringing too much more than too little.
Yeah.
More often than not. And then they start getting into those super experienced guys that are sub 50 pounds for 8 days or 10 days. I mean, those guys are barely skimping by.
They know exactly how many calories they need to survive.
Yeah, down to the calorie.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that would. I took a lot of notes in my phone laying in bed at night, and that was one thing that I was that would be so nice, and it's multi-use. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. So
absolutely, yeah. Cool. Well, we've officially hit our time, so
perfect.
Appreciate you sitting with us the whole time. I know hopefully you can still get home for dinner in time.
Oh, we'll be good.
Don't worry about it. All right. We don't want to anger any wives yet.
Tell your wife we appreciate the brownies. They were amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do. Those were awesome.
100%.
We'll do.
Yeah. Well, perfect. Well, to all of our listeners, thank you so much for hanging in there with us as well on your Monday morning. If you would be so kind, if you enjoyed what you heard, share it with a friend that might enjoy the content as well. And if you could, leave us a written review, and a rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. That goes a long way in helping this show get in front of a new audience. If you'd be so inclined as to look on our website, you'll see a partners page and a shop page. Those are 2 ways that you can help us out financially. We've got a lot of companies that have decided they like what we're doing and they want to help us out. So they've got discount codes with several different companies that are all outdoor based. You can get some great gear at a discount, and helps them out, helps us out. And we've also got our shop with some merch, logo wear. We've been getting some pictures of people rocking the logo, and I really, really enjoy seeing that. It's a pretty cool thing to see somebody rock your logo. So if you do want to buy a hat, hoodie, t-shirt, anything like that, then we appreciate it, and send us a picture. Other than that, well, gentlemen, Chris, thank you so much for sitting in here with us.
It's good to see you guys again.
Glad to have you back in the studio.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it, and hope everybody else does too.
So. Yeah, I'm sure they will. So, all right, folks. Well, enjoy the rest of your week, and until next time, get out there, get after it. Good luck. We'll see you there.